Chapter 653. Countless giant hands shot towards the huge fireball cast by Susanoo. The giant hands haven't touched the fireball yet, but because of the high-speed movement, the powerful wind pressure wrapped around the giant hands has already weakened the flames of the fireball by a part. Soon, the giant hands directly touched the huge fireball created by the great fireball jutsu. Obviously, it was such a huge wooden hand, but it displayed a speed far beyond its huge size. There were a few afterimages as the palms waved, constantly shooting towards the fireballs summoned by the great fireball jutsu. If one observed carefully, it wouldn't be difficult to find that although the senjutsu would release, True Thousand Hands was constantly shooting towards the fireball, the wooden palms didn't touch the fireball at all. Just like the previous method of using wind pressure to weaken the fireball, at this moment, Senju Takuma was using the senjutsu would release, True Thousand Hands to continuously wave his palms to extinguish the fire. It was obviously such a violent attack, but Senju Takuma was able to control such an attack so exquisitely. Senju Takuma, the first Hokage who has regained his self-consciousness, is such a powerful and terrifying ninja. The ninjas standing on the battlefield are all Kage level or even stronger than Kage level. Such a group of people can naturally see Senju Takuma's exquisite operation and the accomplishment required to perform such an operation. This kind of control not only requires a lot of chakra as the foundation, but also requires exquisite control of chakra, and at this moment, Senju Takuma is undoubtedly the best embodiment of this. Sure enough. No matter how many times I see it, Sensei's strength is the best I have ever seen in my life, no one can surpass him. Looking at Senju Takuma's great power, as the common disciple of Senju Takuma and Tobirama, Sandaime Yuan Fei Hiruzen couldn't help but sigh with emotion. For many years, he hasn't seen the first Hokage go all out like this, and this almost miraculous ninjutsu has finally reappeared. Hearing Yuan Fei Hiruzen's words, the several Kage and Nangongja also couldn't help but nod. After all, Yuan Fei Hiruzen's words are completely irrefutable. If Uchiha Madara before relied on his invincible strength to make people's hearts full of fear, then Senju Takuma at this moment relied on his majestic means and spirit to make people's heart involuntarily filled with respect. Perhaps it is precisely because of the special characteristics of his body and soul that makes Senju Takuma's body more suitable than Uchiha Madara's. While Senju Hiruzen, and Senju Hiruzen, and Hiruzen, and Hiruzen. Yes, that's it. That's how it should be. Looking at Senju Takuma, although his body is a fake body created by the power of Edo Tensei, Uchiha Madara can still clearly feel a blazing thing flowing in his chest. This blazing thing is called fighting intent. Hashirama. In fact, we should be grateful that our bodies are created by the Edo Tensei, because such a body is not afraid of injury, and it also improves our physical fitness to the peak state. Do you know what I can't stand the most? It's people like you and me who finally usher in our twilight years under the erosion of time. I still have a lot of plans, but now that I see you, I don't want to care about these things anymore. Now, there is only one voice in my heart: fight. 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 Defeat the person who is standing in front of you, the person who knows you the most. Such a voice is boiling in my heart and brain. Hashirama. Fight, fight. He controlled the Susanoo to hold the katana in his hand, and the wings behind the Susanoo shook as it rushed towards Hashirama with Madara on its back. Looking at Uchiha Madara rushing towards him, Senju Takuma's heart flashed with a trace of joy and relief. Although so many years have passed, Uchiha Madara is still the proud Uchiha Madara. His opponent is still the same as in his memory. Such a thing is really a happy thing for Senju Takuma. In that case, come on. Senjutsu, Mokuton, Buddha on top. After Senju Takuma said the name of the move, the wooden giant hands, which were spread out into palms or formed various Buddhist hand seals, clenched into fists one by one. The Buddha's head, which originally looked very kind, quietly turned into a glaring Vajra at this moment. Vajra's glaring eyes subdued the four demons, Bodhisattva lowered his eyebrows, so compassionate the six paths. When Buddha incarnates into Vajra, it is time to subdue demons and eliminate demons. Buddha on top can be said to be a ninjutsu that Senju Takuma uses his senjutsu and mokutan ability to the extreme. It can be said that this ninjutsu is the most offensive ninjutsu among all of Senju Takuma's ninjutsu. During the battle with Uchiha Madara, it was by this ninjutsu that one of the wonders of the ninja world, the Valley of the End, was created. Seeing Senju Takuma use such a ninjutsu, Uchiha Madara naturally won't hold back. He stimulated the power of his eternal Manjikyu Sharingan and Rinnegan to the extreme. The blue chakra flame on the blue long sword slowly turned into a somewhat turbid flame. Hashirama. This time, I will never lose to you. In Uchiha Madara's mind, although he survived the last battle with Senju Takuma, in Uchiha Madara's mind, he also lost that battle. For the proud Uchiha Madara, such a failure is a stain that he can't tolerate. Now that he can finally fight with his old enemy Senju Takuma again, such a situation naturally made Uchiha Madara involuntarily feel a strong emotion to erase the stain and prove himself. The blue long sword burning with turbid flame and the wooden giant hands directly collided with each other. As the controllers of Susanoo and True Thousand Hands, Uchiha Madara and Senju Takuma couldn't help but smile with joy and satisfaction. Chapter 654. Let's shift our sight from the main battlefield and look at the Cloud Village that was invaded by Akatsuki. Under the Cloud Village, in a huge underground space, a space ripple slowly appeared, and Uchiha Obito with a gray mask and a navy blue robe slowly appeared in the underground space. Obito slowly took off the mask on his face, revealing his true appearance. At this moment, Obito's mood was not so good, because Yahiko's Kabuto was controlled, and after the Edo Tensei was unlocked, the 6 clones of column force that he summoned with the Edo Tensei also dissipated. Black Zetsu's betrayal, Uchiha Madara's loss of control, although Obito had expected all of this, but after these illusory ideas really became reality, the humiliation and anger still couldn't be suppressed. Uchiha Obito's heart, there was still a seal placed by Uchiha Madara. As long as Uchiha Madara recovered his consciousness, with such a seal that controlled Uchiha Obito's life gate, Uchiha Obito could only be a marionette in the hands of Uchiha Madara. The more you are imprisoned, the more you pursue freedom. This is the inevitable desire of life, this is the most precious treasure that human beings can't give up. Now, Uchiha Obito's biggest desire was to break free from the control of Uchiha Madara. And the only thing that can bring freedom to Obito is to make himself powerful, so that Uchiha Madara won't dare to treat him as a puppet that can be controlled at will. At this moment, the thing that is enough to support Uchiha Obito to obtain powerful strength is placed in front of Obito, the Gedo Mazo. Because Obito didn't put the Hachibi's chakra and the Nine Tails chakra into the Gedo Mazo, now the Gedo Mazo only has 7 eyes, and its aura is very stable. Looking at the Gedo Mazo, Obito felt very conflicted. After all, the power of the Hachibi and Nine Tails was not that complete at the moment. If he used this incomplete power to replenish the Gedo Mazo, Obito had no idea what would happen. However, the current situation forced Obito to take the risk and awaken the Gedo Mazo. As long as he could seal the resurrected Jubi into his body, he would obtain the same power as the 6 Paths Sage, Otsutsuki Hagoromo, the ancestor of the shinobi world. As long as he has such power, Uchiha Madara will not pose any threat to him. Such thoughts burned in Uchiha Obito's heart like a flame, making him anxious all the time. 10 Tails, Obito took out 2 scrolls from his arms. After hesitating for a moment, Uchiha Obito tore the 2 scrolls directly. The red gourd and the amber bottle appeared directly on the ground in front of Uchiha Obito. The red gourd sealed the Nine Tails chakra extracted from Gold Horn and Silver Horn, while the amber bottle sealed the Hachibi's chakra extracted from the octopus tentacle left behind by Killer Bee as his substitute. I hope everything will go as I expected. After unsealing the red gourd and the amber bottle, 2 powerful chakra appeared directly in front of Uchiha Obito. Unlike the tailed beast extracted from Column Force's body, these two very pure tailed beast chakra don't need to be extracted with any exquisite ninjutsu. They can be directly thrown into the Gedo Mazo of the 10 Tails shell to play their role. Mobilizing the power of the Rinnegan in his eye sockets, Uchiha Obito's hands began to slowly form hand seals. As Obito continued to form hand seals, the Gedo Mazo seemed to have received instructions and slowly opened its mouth. The moment it opened its mouth, the Gedo Mazo's chains were directly spat out. The chains wrapped around the two-tailed beast chakra, layer by layer, directly entangling the two chakra tightly. With a flash of determination in his eyes, Uchiha Obito's hands that were constantly forming hand seals also slowly stopped. As Obito stopped his movements, the Gedo Mazo finally couldn't suppress its desire for the 9 tails and the Hachibi chakra, and directly absorbed the 2 chakra into its body. After absorbing the 2 chakra into its body, the Gedo Mazo of the 10 tails didn't directly change its appearance or aura as Uchiha Obito expected. After absorbing the 2 chakra into its body, the only change in the Gedo Mazo was that all its eyes were opened, and there was almost no change. However, Uchiha Obito wasn't just using his eyes to observe the Gedo Mazo, Uchiha Obito was also using his Rinnegan to feel the state of the Gedo Mazo. Through the Rinnegan, Uchiha Obito clearly felt that a huge power was being nurtured in the Gedo Mazo. Roar! Suddenly, as if the power in its body had reached a critical value, the Gedo Mazo, or the incomplete Jubi at this moment also began to slowly move. Very good. Very good. Seeing that the Gedo Mazo was full of vitality at this moment, Uchiha Obito directly jumped and stood on the back of the Gedo Mazo that was moving horizontally. Two things similar to umbilical cords extended from the Gedo Mazo and Uchiha Obito's body at the same time, connecting Uchiha Obito and the Gedo Mazo. Uchiha Obito couldn't help but feel a bit of joy in his heart when he felt the powerful power continuously transmitted from the Jubi's body to his own body through the umbilical cord, and constantly transforming his body. Because of the umbilical cord connection, Uchiha Obito also understood the state of the Jubi at this moment. The Hachibi and 9 tails that should have been completely collected were replaced by 2 chakra, so the Jubi was actually in an incomplete state at this moment. However, this incomplete state would not be maintained forever. As long as the Jubi absorbed a lot of chakra or evolved slowly with its own recovery ability, the Jubi would be able to transcend the current incomplete state and become the real, Jubi divine tree. Once the Jubi became complete, he could use a suitable method to make himself a living sage with the same power as the sage of the 6 paths. At that time, he could cast infinite Tsukuyomi to the entire world and see Rin, whom he missed day and night. Uchiha Madara's behavior of treating him as a marionette would also come to an end. Chapter 655. Although there was still a certain distance between the battlefield and the Cloud Village, the awakening of the Jubi this time didn't have much impact under the deliberate control of Uchiha Obito. However, Nangongja, Minato Watergate, Senju Takuma, and Uchiha Madara were still very keenly aware of the sudden birth of a powerful force under the Cloud Village. Compared to Nangongja, Minato Watergate, and Senju Takuma, who relied on their connection with the natural energy to obtain the information of the awakening of the Jubi, Uchiha Madara, who also has the Rinnegan and even has a closer connection with the Gedo Mazo to a certain extent, undoubtedly felt the state of the Jubi more clearly at this moment. Originally, Uchiha Madara and Senju Takuma were fighting back and forth, and even a little bit of excitement. But after feeling the awakening of the Jubi, his mind, which was originally muddled by blood, calmed down at this moment. His obsession with victory and proving himself weakened a lot after sensing the resurrection of the Jubi. After all, Uchiha Madara's ultimate goal was not to defeat the half-dead Senju Takuma at this moment, but to use the power of the Jubi to bring eternal peace to the ninja world, to prove to himself that he is the one who surpassed Senju Takuma and can bring peace to the ninja world. Hashirama, the battle between you and me will be suspended here for the time being. It seems that the people on our side seem to be ready for the second stage of the plan. Although the battle between us is interesting now, it has to stop. Let's see how you can defeat my next plan. Uchiha Madara controlled his Susanoo and directly slashed at Senju Takuma with the long sword burning with turbid flames in his hand. Such an attack naturally temporarily forced Senju Takuma to retreat, and Uchiha Madara also took advantage of this opportunity to control his Susanoo to shake the wings behind his back and directly break away from the battle with Senju Takuma. After hearing Uchiha Madara's words, after a short period of doubt, Senju Takuma, with his understanding of Uchiha Madara and the Eye of the Moon plan that Orochimaru relayed to him, probably guessed what the so-called second stage was. Almost instantly, he lifted his senjutsu, would release, True Thousand Hands, and arrived at the place where the Kages gathered. Originally, the Kages wanted to ask why Senju Takuma didn't continue to chase after them, but they saw Senju Takuma's pale face and worry in his eyes. If I'm not wrong, Senju Takuma turned around and looked at Uchiha Madara, who was controlling his Susanoo to fly away, and said in a dignified tone, "Akatsuki should have already resurrected the Jubi." Hearing Senju Takuma's words, Ai, the fourth Raikage, suddenly stood up at this moment. His face was full of disbelief, and said to Senju Takuma, "That's impossible, isn't the Jubi only able to awaken after gathering all the tailed beasts?" Now my brother Column Force, Killer Bee, and fourth Raikage, Wave Kaze Watergate's child, Nine Tails, Column Force, and Uzumaki Naruto are all staying in the camp, and there is a whole Umbu team around them to protect and monitor them. Even if these Umbu teams are useless, with the power of Killer Bee and Uzumaki Naruto, it's enough to give us an early warning. It's impossible for Akatsuki to gather the power of Hachibi and Nine Tails. Well, because Naruto and Killer Bee's tent was too far back, and Uchiha Madara's Mokutan, Flowering Tree World Descent, made most of the ninjas in the ninja allied forces fall into a deep sleep, so the information about Uzumaki Naruto being attacked by Akatsuki wasn't sent to the 5 Kages who were fighting in the front line. Uchiha Sasuke, who knew about it, didn't tell the 5 Kages what he just saw. After all, although AI's prediction was slightly wrong, Uzumaki Naruto and Killer Bee weren't captured by Akatsuki. He wasn't familiar with the 4th Raikage, because of AI's attack on him during the 5 Kages tournament. Sasuke didn't have a good impression of AI, so Sasuke, who has always been cold, was naturally too lazy to tell AI about the situation he encountered. Hearing AI's words, Wave Kaze Watergate walked forward, almost to AI's face, and said, "4th Raikage-sama, please don't worry. I actually left Flying Thunder God mark on Naruto's body. Now that Uchiha Madara has left, and we have accumulated a lot of power here. So, I'll take Naruto and Killer Bee here now. I believe that with the power of our 11 Kage level ninjas, it will be enough to guarantee their safety." That's right, unknowingly, the high-end power of the ninja allied forces has actually expanded greatly. The 3 former Hokages, Konoha Sannin, the 4 current Kage Shinobi, and Nangong Zetsu. Although they aren't ninjas, they have internal strength beyond the Kage level. Even if they don't count Uchiha Sasuke, who Minato doesn't know, the ninja allied forces have a total of 11 Kage level powerhouses in their hands. Such a huge force naturally made this place the most suitable place to protect Column Force. The reason why the 4th Raikage AI became so irritable after hearing Senju Takuma's prediction was that he was worried about whether his brother Killer Bee was really captured by Akatsuki. Now Watergate's proposal was actually to protect his child and stabilize the 4th Raikage AI's heart. Hearing Watergate's proposal, almost everyone present nodded in agreement. After all, if under the protection of so many strong ninjas, Akatsuki can still kidnap Naruto and Killer Bee, the 2 remaining Column Force, then this battle is not worth fighting. Seeing that the people present didn't raise any objections, Watergate's heart also relaxed a lot. After all, Watergate, who was in Sage mode, was already aware of Jubi's awakening, but because he didn't know what kind of existence Jubi was, so Watergate thought that other strong ninjas had joined Akatsuki's camp. But after hearing Senju Takuma's words, Watergate also instantly understood. That's right, how can such a huge and irritable chakra be something that ordinary people can have? At this moment, Minato was also worried about whether his child was really captured by Akatsuki organization or not, but Minato was obviously better than A in restraining his emotions. After getting everyone's approval, Watergate's heart became anxious, and directly used Flying Thunder God technique to leave the battlefield and came to the side of Naruto and Killer Bee. Chapter 656. The Flying Thunder God Jutsu itself is a space ninjutsu. Such a ninjutsu is naturally extremely fast. Seeing that Minato's figure suddenly disappeared, Terumi Mei also walked in front of one of the Sannin, Katsuyaheim, Tsunade and said, "Tsunade-sama. Please treat Sandane Tsuchikage, Inoki, and the fifth Kazekage, Gaara." Both of them suffered different injuries during the battle with Uchiha Madara. Because I'm not a medical ninja, I can't judge the specific situation. Please treat them. As one of the Sannin, Tsunade's medical ninjutsu can be said to be famous in the ninja world. So out of respect for a strong person like Tsunade, even if she was the Mizukage of the Mist Village, Mei still called Tsunade-sama. So after seeing that everything was settled for the time being, Mei also walked in front of Tsunade and asked for her help. Hearing Mei's request, and considering that the 5 major ninja villages have now united together to form the Ninja Coalition Forces, as a member of Woodleaf Ninja Village, helping her allies is also her duty. Therefore, under the leadership of Terumi Mei, Tsunade also walked to Gaara, who had a huge scratch on his abdomen, and Inoki, who had been cut into 2 pieces with only a faint breath left. Although Gaara's injuries looked terrible, with ninja's extraordinary physical fitness, in fact, Tsunade only needs simple treatment to completely recover Gaara's injuries. The real problem was actually Inoki. Because she missed the best treatment time, Tsunade couldn't guarantee that she could completely heal Inoki's serious injury under the current conditions. Summoning Jutsu. With a quick hand seal, Tsunade used Summoning Jutsu to summon Katsuyu's clone that can completely wrap Inoki. He commanded the slug to wrap Inoki in its body. With the healing ability of the slug, it can temporarily maintain the vitality of Inoki's body. After a better medical environment, Inoki can be treated better. After dealing with Inoki's problem, Tsunade also turned directly to Gaara's side. Condensing the medical ninjutsu chakra in her hand, she used the high-end medical ninjutsu, Divine Palm technique. The palm wrapped in Divine Palm technique covered the wound on Gaara's abdomen, and the powerful healing ability of Divine Palm technique directly played a role. As the treatment went on, Gaara's pale complexion gradually improved due to the severe pain from the wound on his abdomen. Gaara's spirit slightly recovered, and he also looked at Tsunade in front of him with a serious expression on her face and thanked her, "Thank you Tsunade-sama." After hearing Gaara's gratitude, Tsunade raised her head looked at Gaara, but she lowered her head again, and continued to treat Gaara's injuries. To be honest, from the World War Ninja World War, is, Sama, Ninja World War. Tsunade has experienced 2 shinobi world wars, and she is very clear about how cruel the war is. Any battle will cause great damage to any side involved in this war. Just now, when everyone's attention was devoted to the battle between her grandfather and his old enemy Uchiha Madara, Tsunade looked at the ninjas who have lost their lives and the countless white Zetsu's mutilated bodies on the battlefield. Perhaps it's really old, or because she has been staying in the Woodleaf with Jiraiya for a long time, Tsunade's heart has inevitably become compassionate. Seeing so many people lose their lives, the disgust in Tsunade's heart for participating in the battle became even stronger. After treating Gaara, Tsunade also silently walked to her husband Jiraiya and comrade Orochimaru's side and stood silently behind them. Seeing Tsunade's slightly indifferent attitude, several Kage were a little puzzled. But after all, their relationship with Tsunade is not that close. Even if Tsunade's performance is relatively indifferent, several Kage have no position to condemn Tsunade. After all, on this battlefield, Tsunade can be said to be the only medical ninja who can keep up with everyone's attack rhythm. After Tsunade finished treating Gaara, the present Kage, Nangongja, and Sasuke fell into a very awkward silence for a while. After all, several present Kage have always regarded each other as potential enemies before the formation of the ninja allied forces, and the 3 dead Hokage who were summoned by Edo Tensei were also worried about the war situation and didn't want to chat. Nangongja and Sasuke were even more indifferent and didn't want to deal with these people. It was also in such silence that an inexplicable emotion began to spread. After all, the people around each other at this moment were at the same level as themselves. Therefore, everyone instinctively relaxed a little bit. Although they must remain confident in front of the ninjas of their own village, in fact, it was inevitable for everyone to have some worries in their hearts. After all, what they are facing now is not an ordinary enemy. They are about to face the Jubi that made Hagoromo Sennin quite helpless and even had to fight to the death. Just as everyone was immersed in their own emotions, a golden light suddenly flashed by. When the light faded away, 3 figures appeared on the spot. With Naruto and Killer Bee, Watergate finally appeared on the battlefield again. By seeing his brother appear beside him, and it seemed that he didn't suffer any injuries, Yondaime Rakich's heart, which had been suspended in his chest, finally got a trace of peace. Just when A was about to step forward and ask his brother about the situation behind, a huge explosion suddenly came into everyone's ears. Looking at the place where the explosion sound came from, all the Kage's eyes flashed with a trace of panic. Because in that direction, it was the place where Nangongja commanded the disciples of Bloodcloth Pavilion to transfer the unconscious ninjas of the Ninja Allied Forces. And judging from the power of the explosion, ordinary ninjas have no way to resist such an attack. Chapter 657. At this moment, the Jubi is not complete. Because it lacks the power of the Hachibi and 9 Tails, the Jubi at this moment is actually just an incomplete Jubi. However, such a Jubi is not without the possibility of making up for the shortcomings in its body. As long as it can absorb a lot of chakra, or give enough time to use the chakra of other tailed beasts in its body, the Jubi can make up for its own shortcomings. As the main controller of the Jubi, Uchiha Obito, at this moment, actually hopes that the Jubi can recover its strength as soon as possible. After all, the longer it is delayed, the more likely it is for Uchiha Madara to get more opportunities. Uchiha Obito's heart has risen to the point where it is difficult to restrain himself from being controlled by Uchiha Madara. Now that he has collected enough chakra, he can resurrect the Jubi. It just so happens that Uchiha Madara's Mokuton, advent of the flowering tree world, forced a large number of ninjas of the Ninja Allied Forces into a deep coma. Since this group of sheep is here, Uchiha Obito naturally has no reason to let them go. He directly controlled the Jubi to jump high from the Cloud Village. The Jubi was like a cannonball that directly smashed into the tent set up for the unconscious members of the Ninja Allied Forces. Although there are also members of the Bloodcloak Pavilion commanded by Nangongja to carry out the defense work in this tent, but for the Jubi and Uchiha Obito, the people of the Bloodcloak Pavilion are indeed a bit useless. When they first arrived here, the efficiency of the Jubi absorbing the chakra in the Ninja Allied Forces was actually not high. It mainly relied on the vines that spread out from its body and directly pierced into the bodies of the Ninja Allied Forces to absorb the chakra. However, even if the absorption efficiency is not high, the Jubi still collected a lot of chakra in a short time. It seems that because the chakra in its body has accumulated to a limit, the body of the Jubi also began to slowly change. Unlike the Geto Mazo form full of muscles, the Jubi at this moment has become a bit thinner. 10 tail-like things slowly swayed behind the Jubi, forming a sharp contrast with the slightly thin body of the Jubi. Because his body has been connected with the Jubi, Uchiha Obito is still very clear about the state of the Jubi at this moment. Although the Jubi's body has changed, the Jubi at this moment has not completed its complete evolution. At this moment, the Jubi should be in the second stage of its incomplete form. There was still a certain gap between it and its complete form. But because the power of the Jubi has increased again, Uchiha Obito at this moment is a bit difficult to control such a powerful force. He hurriedly urged the part of his body that belongs to Senja Takuma to extend several umbilical cord-like things to connect himself to the Jubi. Obito wanted to stabilize the connection between himself and the Jubi in this way. But it turned out that Obito's thinking was too simple. The Jubi's almost endless chakra is very powerful, and it is precisely because of such powerful chakra that the Jubi is extremely difficult to control. Although Uchiha Obito himself has some strength, with the special power of his Manjikyu Sharingan and the strange ability of his Rinnegan in his eye sockets, he can basically fight back and forth with the Kage at this moment. But the difference in strength can't be made up by relying on a few strange skills. Uchiha Obito's chakra capacity and physical fitness are actually not that strong. It is already a blessing to be able to fully control the Jubi's first form. At this moment, the Jubi's second form has completely exceeded the limit of Uchiha Obito's control. At this moment, blood was forced out of Obito's nose and eyes because of the strong pressure. He looked terrible. Roar! As an important sign that the Jubi is no longer under Uchiha Obito's control, the only eye of the Jubi at this moment was full of violent aura. After roaring towards the sky, spikes slowly grew out of the Jubi's tail and body at this moment. In fact, Obito is very familiar with such a ninjutsu. After all, Obito has Senjutsu Kuma's chakra in his body. The wood release, cutting jutsu is an extremely offensive ninjutsu that Obito has used many times. But looking at the dense spikes on the Jubi's body at this moment, compared to the so-called cutting jutsu he used before, it's simply a small trick. After discovering that he has no way to control the Jubi at all, Uchiha Obito also decisively relaxed his control of the Jubi. Anyway, these ninjas are just fertilizer for the Jubi for Uchiha Obito, he doesn't care about them. Finally, after a short accumulation of power, the wooden thorns on Jubi's body shot out. Unlike the ordinary wood release cutting technique, there was a vine-like thing behind the wooden thorns that connected Jubi's body to Jubi's body. When a ninja of the ninja allied forces is hit by the wooden thorns, these wooden thorns will immediately extract the chakra from the ninja's body and directly absorb the chakra into their own body to make up for the lack of chakra. After all, Jubi itself is the source of chakra. Any type of chakra that enters Jubi's body will immediately be transformed into a powerful chakra that meets Jubi's needs. Not only was he absorbing chakra from the ninja, but he was also absorbing the natural energy in the air at full power. And with the passage of time, a large amount of chakra is accumulated in Jubi's body. Although it's impossible to accurately predict what level will trigger Jubi's next evolution, it won't be long. Soon, will I be able to become Jubi's column force and control my life? Uchiha Obito couldn't help but feel a little excited when he thought of this, and his eyes were filled with excitement. But suddenly, a voice rushed into Obito's ears, "You are Obito?" Chapter 658. That's right, since the beginning of throwing the 9 tails and the Hachibi's chakra at the Geto Mazo, Obito didn't wear his mask anymore. After all, the Jubi has already been resurrected, so it doesn't make much sense for him to hide his identity. Although Uchiha Madara's would release, Flowering Tree World's descent caused many ninjas to fall into a coma, some powerful ninjas have already woken up by relying on their strong physical fitness. They may not be able to fully exert their strength, but they can still keep their consciousness awake. And the person who called out Obito's name is none other than Obito's former teammate, Hatake Kakashi, a woodleaf ninja who has another Manjikyu Sharingan. For a long time, Hatake Kakashi felt very guilty because of the death of his 2 teammates, Uchiha Obito and Harano Rin. Even now, Kakashi doesn't dare to say that he can completely let go of it. In this war, Hatake Kakashi was the commander of a combat force divided by the allied ninja forces, so at this moment, Hatake Kakashi, as one of the few ninjas who has the ability to block the attack of the Jubi, couldn't distinguish the real Uchiha Obito when he saw him from a distance. Now that the Jubi has started to attack, the Uchiha Obito on his back is very obvious. Although his face has changed, Kakashi still recognized this person who used to play with him. At this moment, Obito was still wearing the navy blue robe, and in his eyes, there was also a Rinnegan and a Sharingan, all of which proved that Uchiha Obito was the masked man who called himself Uchiha Madara. The once cheerful and hot-blooded best friend has now become a cold-blooded and ruthless villain? Looking at Obito, Hatake Kakashi's eyes were full of sadness. After all, if it wasn't for Kakashi, no one would understand how important Obito and Harano Rin were to him. At this moment, Kakashi's heart was complicated. On the one hand, Kakashi is very happy that his best friend didn't die, but at the same time, Kakashi is very sad that his best friend has become such a person. Hearing Kakashi's voice, Uchiha Obito also slowly looked at Hatake Kakashi, but his eyes almost didn't stay on Kakashi. Obito once again looked at the place where the ninjas gathered. He seemed to be observing the progress of the Jubi's chakra collection. Obito, are you really different from the original you? Looking at Uchiha Obito's cold face, Hatake Kakashi's eyes flashed with determination as he didn't even care about the ninjas being slaughtered by the Jubi's hands. Since his best friend has become like this, then let him do his best to stop him. He activated the Raiton chakra in his body, and constantly relied on the Raiton chakra to stimulate his body to get rid of the paralysis state as soon as possible. After slightly moving his fingers, after confirming that his body has almost returned to normal, Kakashi also slowly revealed his covered Sharingan. Let me use the power you left me to stop you. His hands quickly formed hand seals, and Kakashi's signature ninjutsu, Raiton, Raikiri, was directly used by Kakashi. Perhaps because of the anger and sadness in his heart, the aura of the Raikiri in Kakashi's hand at this moment became extremely violent. Ha! Holding Raikiri in his hand, and relying on the Raiton chakra to stimulate his body, Kakashi's speed suddenly increased. Dodging the huge wooden thorns that were shot towards him, Kakashi directly rushed towards Uchiha Obito's place. Stepping on the body of the Jubi, Kakashi directly approached Uchiha Obito's side at a very fast speed. Obito naturally wouldn't ignore such a person who passed through the obstacles set by the Jubis, would release, cutting technique, and directly came to his side. Because he was now connected to the Jubi, he could only move his body in a small range. Now that Hatake Kakashi came to his side, Uchiha Obito was actually quite nervous. Because Uchiha Obito only had one Rinnegan, so in fact, the power of the Rinnegan that Obito could use was very little. But now that his body couldn't move at will, and the power of his Manjikyu Sharingan directly cut off his connection with the world, and he couldn't use it to control the Jubi, then the only thing he could rely on now was his fire release ninjutsu and the power of the Rinnegan. However, although the fire release ninjutsu was very powerful, it wasn't fast enough to cast. Looking at Kakashi's current movement speed, if he cast the fire release ninjutsu, then there was a high chance that Hatake Kakashi would directly dodge it. So now the only means that Uchiha Obito could use to save himself were a few extremely high-level large-scale fire release ninjutsu or the ninjutsu contained in the Rinnegan. Looking at Kakashi's figure that was constantly approaching him, Uchiha Obito finally made a decision in his heart. Using the power of the Rinnegan to condense a black iron rod in his hand, and reluctantly urged the power of the Rinnegan contained in the Rinnegan to use Shinra Tensei. The black iron rods were regarded as hidden weapons, and directly used the repulsive force contained in Shinra Tensei to shoot out the iron rods one by one. Looking at the iron rods flying towards him, Hatake Kakashi directly controlled his body and tried his best to avoid such an attack. Looking at Hatake Kakashi attacking, Uchiha Obito also predicted that the target of Hatake Kakashi's attack was actually his chest. If he only wanted to attack his chest or other parts of his body, then it wouldn't be a threat to him at all. Obito, let me stop you from doing what you're doing. Raiton, Raikiri. Looking at himself getting closer and closer to Uchiha Obito, Hatake Kakashi once again injected a large amount of chakra into the Raikiri in his hand. Because of the large amount of chakra injected into the Raikiri also flashed a dazzling white light, and Hatake Kakashi's face also seemed to have a bit of light. Chapter 659. Although Kakashi tried his best to avoid Uchiha's black iron staff, but the speed of the black iron staff was too fast because of Shinra Tensei's control, so Kakashi decided to defeat Uchiha Obito at the cost of his own life. He tried his best to prevent the black iron staff from hitting his vital points and his arms, to ensure that his attack can hit Uchiha Obito. Seeing that Kakashi was willing to get injured, Uchiha Obito directly stopped shooting Kakashi with his black iron staff. Instead, he directly condensed two black iron staff with the same length as a normal sword in his hands, and used his Manjikyu Sharingan and Rinnegan to stare at Kakashi's movements, ready to attack Kakashi at any time. But while Obito was paying attention to Kakashi's hand that was holding Raikiri, Kakashi's other hand slowly reached into the ninja bag behind him. As he got closer and closer to Uchiha Obito, Kakashi's hand that was stretched out behind him began to quickly condense chakra. Raitun Ultimate, Double Thunder Shock. Although from the beginning, Kakashi had been maintaining Raikiri in one hand, but in fact, Hatake Kakashi was very clear in his heart that Uchiha Obito, who has one Manjikyu Sharingan and one Rinnegan, must have surpassed him in all aspects. So if he wants his attack to be effective, then he must use something to distract Obito's attention. When Hatake Kakashi had just created Raitun, Chidori, the predecessor of Raitun, Chidori, Uchiha Obito was still his teammate. Uchiha Obito was very well aware of the power of Chidori and the advanced ninjutsu, as well as Kakashi's reliance and confidence in these two ninjutsu. When he saw Kakashi cast such a ninjutsu, Uchiha Obito couldn't help but think that Hatake Kakashi wanted to rely on such a ninjutsu to fight with him at this moment. This is a kind of habitual thinking of people, and Hatake Kakashi has always used his left hand to cast Raikiri, so when he saw Hatake Kakashi use his left hand to cast Raikiri, naturally he couldn't help but ignore Hatake Kakashi's right hand. In fact, Kakashi had already begun to practice casting Raikiri with both hands at the same time in private, but compared to those dazzling ninjas who stood at the forefront of the shinobi world, Hatake Kakashi can get relatively less attention, so such a killer move was actually forced to stay hidden until now. Go dash! After directly injecting the condensed Raikiri in his right hand into the kunai shining with blue and white light directly shot towards Uchiha Obito's heart. Obito also reacted very quickly. After estimating the power of this kunai wrapped in thunder and lightning, Obito made a prompt decision and directly used the two black iron rods he just condensed to resist this kunai. There was no crisp sound of metal collision or roar of ninjutsu collision. The collision between the kunai and the iron rods was as silent as a drop of water blending into the ocean. Kakashi's chakra capacity is actually very ordinary, but at this moment, the amount of Raitun chakra condensed by this kunai is extremely terrifying. The collision between the kunai and the iron rods actually cut the iron rods made by using Geto's power. But Kakashi will not stop his attack because of the success of his own attack. Instead, he used his Raitun chakra to stimulate his body, almost overdrawing his body's ability directly to the extreme. Raising the Raikiri in his left hand, obviously Kakashi hoped that the Raikiri in his hand will be the one that really determines the outcome of the battle. Open for me. Seeing Kakashi getting closer and closer to himself, Obito knew that he can no longer entangle with this kunai full of chakra. He directly stimulated the chakra in his body, and even directly transferred some chakra from Jubi's body to enhance his physical fitness. Obito's muscles began to bulge under the effect of Jubi's chakra full of vitality. Relying on his own greatly enhanced physical fitness, Uchiha directly separated the two iron rods in his hands that were resisting the Raikiri kunai. The black iron rods, which were originally the length of an ordinary sword, were directly separated from the Raikiri kunai by Obito's violent use, and the Raikiri kunai was also directly bounced away. But when Obito finished all this, Kakashi was already close to Obito, and the Raikiri in Kakashi's hand was about to hit Uchiha Obito's body. Waving the sharp black iron rods, Obito directly swung the two iron rods towards Kakashi's left hand that was stretched out in front of him. As long as his attack was successful, then Kakashi's left hand will definitely die here. But just when the black iron rods in his hand were about to hit Kakashi, Uchiha Obito's hand subtly paused. When Kakashi saw that Uchiha Obito wanted to attack him with the iron rods, he was already prepared to dodge. Obito's sudden pause did not stop Kakashi's movement. After all, Kakashi's movement had a certain inertia. In the process of dodging, Kakashi's hand that was holding the raikiri accidentally cut through the wooden umbilical cord that connected Obito and the Jubi together. Obito naturally didn't stop because he couldn't do anything to Kakashi. The reason why he stopped was because he sensed a familiar chakra coming from the distant sky. It was a chakra that made Obito feel both fear and familiarity. Uchiha Madara is coming. But to Obito's surprise, Kakashi actually broke the link between himself and the Jubi. It's already a very difficult thing for Obito to control the second form of the Jubi with his own strength. When one of the links was cut, the control that was barely maintained was directly affected. Double danger fell on Uchiha Obito's head at the same time. Chapter 660. Controlling the Susanoo, Uchiha Madara directly came to the place where the Jubi was wreaking havoc. Uchiha Madara himself left the battlefield a little earlier than Nangong's group, and Uchiha Madara controlled the Susanoo to fly quickly to the place where the Jubi and Uchiha Obito were. Seeing that the Jubi was wreaking havoc on the battlefield because of the loss of Uchiha Obito's control, Uchiha Madara's mouth showed a bit of a smile. Sure enough, this is the power I've been pursuing. On the battlefield, the incomplete Jubi directly suppressed the entire Shinobi World Allied forces and the Blood Cloak Pavilion's forces. Every minute and every second, the disciples of the Blood Cloak Pavilion and the Shinobi World Allied forces suffered a large number of casualties. This is power. And this almost invincible power is about to fall into his hands. As long as he can seal the Jubi, who has almost unlimited chakra, in his body, and then directly take back his pair of Rinnegan, he will become the god who dominates the world like the most powerful ninja in the history of the Shinobi world, the Sage of Six Paths. Controlling the Susanoo, Uchiha Madara constantly approached the raging Jubi. Waving the chakra in his hand, he directly smashed all the wooden thorns in front of him, and Uchiha Madara controlled the Susanoo to slowly dissipate. With the help of the huge inertia generated by the Susanoo's flight, Uchiha Madara directly fell on the back of the Jubi, not far from Uchiha Obito. Almost instantly, Uchiha Madara directly appeared beside Uchiha Obito. Because using the lightning chakra just now seriously overdrew his body, Kakashi directly collapsed beside Uchiha Obito. Uchiha Madara casually glanced at Kakashi, but didn't say anything at all. Although Hatake Kakashi has a Manjikyu Sharingan that can complete Uchiha Obito's Manjikyu Sharingan, but Uchiha Madara didn't care at all. In fact, Madara actually hoped that Uchiha Obito's strength was controlled here. With a pair of his own Manjikyu Sharingan, the Uchiha clan is a very terrifying existence. In order to reduce the trouble after, Uchiha Madara directly kicked Kakashi's body, and directly kicked him down from the back of the Jubi. Uchiha Madara didn't care whether Kakashi died or not. After all, for his big plan, Kakashi was just a small role that didn't even play a role in his plan. You're really in a sorry state. Obito. Madara looked at Obito, who was suffering from the Jubi's chakra backlash because of the lack of a link connecting him to the Jubi's chakra, and said without any emotion. After hearing Uchiha Madara's words, Obito also tried his best to control his body and said to Uchiha Madara very respectfully. I'm sorry, Madara-sama. I've let you down. To think that I would end up like this because of such a small character. Lowering his head, no one could see the regret and unwillingness on Uchiha Obito's face at this moment. However, Uchiha Obito's trembling shoulders didn't stop, which proved that Uchiha Obito was unwilling and afraid of the current situation. After all, the person who held his life in his hands, who he always wanted to resist, appeared in front of him. Ignoring Obito's fearful posture, Uchiha Madara directly squatted his body and slowly pressed his hand on the Jubi's body. Uchiha Madara's Rinnegan also sent out waves of fluctuations at this moment. It was obvious that Uchiha Madara was using his Rinnegan to communicate with the Jubi at this moment. After a while, a wooden tie similar to the one connected to Obito appeared on the back of the Jubi, urging the Senjutakuma's Mokuton cells in his body. Uchiha Madara's body also extended a wooden tie, which directly connected to the jubi just like Uchiha Obito. With the participation of Uchiha Madara, the backlash from the jubi that originally acted on Uchiha Obito was also weakened a lot. Reluctantly controlling his body to stand up, Obito once again reconnected the broken link between him and the Kyuubi's body. Continue. Since collecting a lot of chakra can restore the jubi, then continue to collect chakra. With a somewhat commanding tone, Uchiha Madara directly ordered Uchiha Obito. Before Uchiha Madara returned to the ninja world, with the help of Uchiha Madara's name and the space ability of his Sharingan, Uchiha Obito had always been in the position of giving orders to others, but now he directly became the one who was ordered. Such a gap was very difficult for Obito to accept in his heart. But as a person who was trained by Uchiha Madara, no one knows how terrifying Uchiha Madara is more than Uchiha Obito. When facing Uchiha Madara, you can use tricks, but you must never think about fighting him head-on, because the powerful strength of Uchiha Madara is enough to make anyone afraid. When he only had a pair of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, Uchiha Madara and Senju Takuma, who was known as the God of Shinobi World, were directly defeated. After getting Senju Takuma's cells, his eternal Manjikyu Sharingan directly evolved into Rinnegan. Uchiha Madara's power has been accumulated to a level that ordinary people can't reach. Now that he has a Rinnegan in his eyes, Uchiha Obito really can't guarantee that Uchiha Madara won't continue his previous plan and directly control him to use the Gedo, Rinnegan, to completely resurrect himself, and then directly seal the jubi in his body. Once he uses the Gedo, Rinnegan, to resurrect Uchiha Madara, whose level of life is almost beyond ordinary people, his life will inevitably face exhaustion. Such a situation is completely not what Uchiha Obito wants to face. But at this moment, Uchiha Madara has appeared in front of him. Uchiha Obito can only temporarily endure, looking for an opportunity to fight against Uchiha Madara, and then save his life. Chapter 661. However, what Obito worried about won't happen in a short time. After all, the current jubi is still in an incomplete state. In order to restore the jubi to its complete state as soon as possible, Uchiha Madara still needs someone to cooperate with him to control the jubi. For Uchiha Madara, Uchiha Obito is indispensable at this moment. Trying to focus his mind on controlling the jubi finally became quiet under the control of Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Obito. After adding Uchiha Madara, who has a deep understanding of Mokuton, it's obvious that the jubi has become more flexible when using Mokuton, cutting technique, and the absorption speed of chakra has also increased a lot. However, shortly after the jubi killed the ninjas of the allied ninjas and the disciples of the Blood Cloak Pavilion, the group led by Watergate also came to the place where the jubi was wreaking havoc. Seeing a large number of ninjas directly penetrated by the wooden thorns, and even their vitality was directly absorbed by the jubi, everyone's eyes were full of hatred. As the head of the Blood Cloak Pavilion, Nangongja naturally also saw countless disciples of the Blood Cloak Pavilion fighting on the battlefield, and he also saw more disciples directly turned into corpses without temperature on the battlefield. Holding the sword in his hand tightly, Nangongja's neck and wrist were full of blue veins because of excessive force. Hokage-sama, it seems that I need your help now. Looking at the first Hokage Senju Takuma, second Hokage Senju Takuma, and 3 generations Hokage Yuan Fei Hiruzen summoned by the Edo Tensei, Watergate said with a bit of pleading. As the Hokage of the Woodleaf Village, Watergate naturally knew that there was a very powerful ninjutsu in the Woodleaf Village, the 4 Red Yang formation. The current size of the jubi is too huge. Even if he summons a large summon beast, Watergate can't guarantee that he can compete with such a terrifying existence that can perform large-scale ninjutsu. Moreover, the biggest advantage of the 4 Crimson Yang formation was not only that it could restrict the jubi's movements, but it could also directly limit the jubi's attack range, so that the jubi would not be able to wantonly harvest the lives of the ninjas of the Ninja Allied Forces and the disciples of the Blood Cloak Pavilion. The 4 Crimson Yang formation can be said to be the most powerful ninjutsu in the Woodleaf Village. In terms of restricting movement, the 4 Crimson Yang formation has extraordinary power. However, even though the four Crimson Yang formation was powerful, it had a drawback that couldn't be considered a drawback. That was, such a powerful barrier ninjutsu required 4 Kage-tier ninjas to use at the same time. But Watergate, if you use the 4 Red Yang formation with the 3 of us, you will undoubtedly lose a lot of advantages against Uchiha Madara and the Jubi. Besides, Yuan Fei Hiruzen looked at Watergate and expressed his doubts. With that, Yuan Fei Hiruzen couldn't help but look at Uchiha Obito standing next to Uchiha Madara. If I'm not mistaken, the person standing next to Uchiha Madara should be your former student, Uchiha Obito of the Uchiha clan, right? As his sensei, I believe that you will understand this person better. Giving him to you should have a better chance of victory than giving him to others. Compared to Sandame, Watergate is relatively less calm. After coming to the battlefield, Watergate has been focusing on the casualties of the ninjas of the Allied Ninjas Army, but he ignored Uchiha Obito standing next to Watergate. Now that he heard Sandame's words, Watergate finally looked at Uchiha Obito standing next to Uchiha Madara. Looking at Uchiha Obito's appearance, Watergate naturally connected the identity of the masked man directly with Uchiha Obito. In the past, he resolutely left Woodleaf Village in order to find the masked man who caused his family so much pain. But he didn't expect that the masked man turned out to be his disciple. Hearing the conversation between Yuan Fei, Hiruzen, and Watergate, the people present basically understood that the Hokage of Woodleaf Village seemed to be preparing to cast a barrier ninjutsu together. But while Watergate and Hiruzen were still talking, Gaara, the 5th Hokage of Sand, slowly walked to Watergate's side and said to Watergate, Yuan Fei, and Hiruzen, 2 Hokage-sama, I don't know if I can help you? Because of the battle with Uchiha Madara just now, I'm actually seriously injured. Although Tsunade-sama healed me, I still can't use my full strength. I'm very worried about whether I'll be a burden in the following battle, so if you just need someone to supply chakra, I think I'm still competent. After hearing Gaara's words, Yuan Fei also fell into contemplation. After all, Gaara actually didn't understand the principle of the 4 Red Yang formation. If Gaara was only a chakra supplier, then Yuan Fei and the other 2 Hokages would be needed to replace Gaara. This kind of thing is very simple, but it's still very difficult to do in practice. After a short period of thinking, Yuan Fei nodded to Gaara, seeming to think that Gaara's proposal was feasible. After seeing Yuan Fei and Hiruzen agree with this plan, Watergate's heart suddenly relaxed. After all, from his own heart, Watergate still hopes that he can personally solve the grievances between himself and Uchiha Obito. Now that Sandame and Yuan Fei have proposed such a plan that allows him to directly participate in the battle, then Watergate is very happy to solve all the grievances with his disciples. Then, I'll leave it to you. Nangongjiro, please rush with us and directly fight the Jubi, Uchiha Madara, and Uchiha Obito. Looking at Watergate's request, Nangongjiro's heart, which was originally filled with anger because of the large number of casualties of the Blood Cloak Pavilion's disciples, directly broke out. Nodding silently, Nangongjiro directly told Watergate how fierce his fighting spirit is with the sharp edge in his eyes. Chapter 662. After a brief exchange, everyone understood what they should do in the battle. After confirming with each other, first Hokage Senju Takuma, second Hokage Senju Takuma, 3 generations Hokage Yuan Fei Hiruzen, and 5th Kazekage Gaara directly rushed toward their predetermined target location. Nangongja, Sasuke, and A directly rushed to the front with their powerful taijutsu cultivation. Sword Chi and thunder were everywhere, and the huge wooden thorns that attacked Nangongja's group were directly shattered. Following Nangongja, Sasuke, and A were the Woodleaf Sannin. However, at this moment, the Woodleaf Sannin didn't just rely on their own legs to run, but directly summoned their 3 iconic giant summon beasts, Snake, Toad, and Slug. Their movements were full of powerful oppression. Behind the 3 giant summon beasts, Uzumaki Naruto, Killer Bee, Mei, and Minato Watergate were also closely following the moving shadows of the summoned beasts, ready to attack at any time. Although the wood release cutting technique used by Jubi is extremely powerful, it's only for ordinary ninjas who haven't stepped into the realm of Kage-level ninja. Faced with such a straightforward attack that only had speed as a threat, a shadow tier expert had too many ways to deal with it. Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Obito, who controlled Jubi, were also well aware of this, so when they saw a group of strong ninjas rushing toward their location, although the Nine Tails Column Force, Uzumaki Naruto, and the Hachibi Column Force Killer Bee were among them, Madara and Uchiha Obito were very wise and didn't directly target them. After all, the goal of Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Obito was to collect a lot of chakra. Now that they can get a lot of chakra from ordinary ninjas, there's no need to gnaw on such a hard bone. In a moment, a group of strong ninjas directly approached the place where Jubi was located. The 3 Hokage and the 5th Kazekage Gaara also saw that everyone had arrived at the mission location, and they directly cooperated with each other to cast the 4 red yang formation. The crimson wall rose directly from the ground, wrapping the Jubi and the powerhouses in it. Some of the wooden thorns shot out from the Jubi's body were directly burned by the scorching temperature after coming into contact with the crimson wall of the 4 crimson yang formation. There was no way for them to play their original role. Looking at the rising red walls, Uchiha Madara's eyes didn't seem to have any trouble. The 4 red yang formation was actually a powerful ninjutsu that he and Senju Takuma plundered together from a hidden family. Uchiha Madara was also very familiar with such a ninjutsu. But even in the face of such a ninjutsu, Uchiha Madara didn't feel any pressure at all. After all, after Uchiha Madara connected his body with Jubi, Uchiha Madara knew how powerful Jubi is. Perhaps the current Jubi, who is not yet in a complete state, has no way to directly break through such a ninjutsu, but as long as Jubi begins to slowly recover and restore his peak strength, Uchiha Madara believes that Jubi will be able to easily break through such a seal. However, his current body doesn't seem to be so complete. He directly became the column force of Jubi. Uchiha Madara is not sure whether his weak body can withstand the power of Jubi. He glanced at Uchiha Obito with a look full of aggression, but he quickly hid such a feeling. Now is not the time to think about such things, right? After getting close to Jubi, a group of strong people also immediately launched their attack. The black armor covering Nangongja's body directly separated from Nangongja's body and turned back into Black Lion Ryo. Nangongja jumped directly on Black Lion Ryo's head and took a few steps back. Nangongja and Ryo directly approached the Sannin and the huge summoned beasts they summoned, Manda, Gamabunta, and Katsuyu. Although the 4 huge summoned beasts are slightly smaller than Jubi in size, they are still very powerful in momentum. Sasuke, who was originally in the rear, also directly summoned Susanoo and came to the side of Sannin and Nangongja. Without the slightest hesitation, Nangongja and Sannin directly cooperated with their huge summoned beasts and familiars to launch an attack on Jubi's body. Sasuke also directly controlled Susanoo to hold the chakra long blade wrapped in thunder and slash directly at Jubi. A also immediately launched Raitun chakra mode, cooperating with Terumi Mei's offensive ninjutsu to directly attack Jubi's body. Almost at the same time, several people attacked Jubi's seemingly slender and fragile limbs. After all, looking at Jubi's slender and unnatural figure at the moment, it's not difficult to see that as long as they can directly cut off Jubi's limbs, it can weaken Jubi's attack to a certain extent. Naruto and Killer Bee, who were at the back, also looked directly at each other and directly communicated with the Bijou in their body to activate Bijou chakra mode. Golden flames rose from Naruto's body, and a golden trench coat with black patterns was directly put on Naruto's body, but all of this was not over. Golden chakra flame spread directly from Naruto's body, directly forming the body of Nine Tails. Similar to Naruto, Killer Bee's body also underwent great changes at this moment. Octopus tentacles directly extended from Killer Bee's body. Unlike Naruto's concept of 9 tails, Killer Bee has completely transformed into Hachibi at this moment. Blood Cloak Pavilion Leader Nangongja, Uchiha Orphan Uchiha Sasuke, 4th Hokage Minato Watergate, 5th Hokage Terumi Mei, 4th Raikage AI, Woodleaf Sannin Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru, Nine Tails Column Force, Uzumaki Naruto, and Killer Bee, Hachibi Column Force. A total of 10 Kage-level powerhouses, or even stronger than Kage-level powerhouses, directly launched the fiercest attack on Jubi at this moment. Is it the Shinobi Allied Forces and the Blood Cloak Pavilion that ushered in peace for the Shinobi world, or is it Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Obito that controlled Jubi to directly pull the Shinobi world into the illusory Eternal Tsukuyomi world? Everything will be answered after this battle. Chapter 663. Whoosh! A flying thunder god Kunai appeared directly on the back of Jubi at a very fast speed, and with a flash of light, Watergate's figure directly appeared on Jubi's body. When Watergate appeared on Jubi's body, he didn't hesitate and directly rushed in the direction of Uchiha Obito. After all, the main enemy at the moment is actually Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Obito, but Uchiha Madara himself is too powerful, and it's difficult for Watergate to fight against Uchiha Madara alone. On the contrary, after Uchiha Obito's identity was revealed, some of the doubts in the past that seemed to be somewhat difficult to solve were instantly solved. Why did the previous masked man show his strength to defeat the opponent, but he just left directly after a few words? Why did the masked man directly participate in so few of the Akatsuki's actions? Everyone subconsciously believed that each and every member of Akatsuki organization should have formidable strength in accordance with their identity, but what if this person's strength was not enough? Regarding Uchiha Obito's talent, as Obito's guide, Watergate is actually very clear about it. Although Uchiha clan has the Sharingan, which is almost like a cheating device, which can directly make their clansmen have powerful strength, but such a cheating device actually needs to control their own strength. From childhood to adulthood, Uchiha Obito has almost no talent in ninjutsu and genjutsu, and a little bit better in taijutsu, but he is also quite weak. Even though Uchiha Obito has been trained by Uchiha Madara, he has also been practicing hard over the years. But to be honest, excluding the strange power from the Sharingan, Uchiha Obito's strength is at most comparable to Hatake Kakashi, and may even be weaker than Kakashi. In the current battlefield, in fact, only Uchiha Obito, Watergate, Tobirama, and Hatake Kakashi have space ability. But when Watergate came to the battlefield, Kakashi was already unable to find any trace of Uchiha Obito, and Tobirama was maintaining the 4 red flame formation and couldn't get away, so in fact, only Watergate can fight against Uchiha Obito. Obito! Looking at Uchiha Obito's direction, Watergate shouted Uchiha Obito's name, and quickly rushed in the direction of Uchiha Obito. Seeing Watergate suddenly rushing towards him, Uchiha Obito's eyes showed a hint of joy, as if he was waiting for someone to come and attack him. Turning his head, Obito looked at Uchiha Madara and said with a bit of a request. Madara-sama, please temporarily control the Jubi, please let me deal with my former sensei. In the ninja world, the relationship between a student and a sensei is very close, even if the relationship between a student and a sensei is like that of a father and a son, no one will raise any objection. Although Uchiha Obito fought against Watergate more than once, this is the first time Uchiha Obito used his real identity to fight against Watergate. Uchiha Obito's request is completely acceptable. Go! Solve it as soon as possible. Glancing at Watergate, Uchiha Madara said coldly to Uchiha Obito. When Uchiha Madara fought against the Kage of the 5 great ninja villages, what made Madara the most interested was Watergate's space ninjutsu. Although Uchiha Madara doesn't think that Watergate is a difficult enemy to defeat, but for Uchiha Madara, Watergate is indeed troublesome enough. Since Uchiha Obito is willing to solve this problem, and he is the only one who can control the Jubi without anyone's cooperation, then he will leave it to Uchiha Obito. With Uchiha Madara's consent, Uchiha Obito also directly took the initiative to release the connection between himself and the Jubi, using the power of the Rinnegan to directly condense two black iron rods in his hands. Seeing Uchiha Obito rushing towards him, Watergate's eyes flashed with a trace of light. Flying Thunder God Jutsu. Watergate's figure suddenly flickered and disappeared directly. At this moment, there was only a special Flying Thunder God Jutsu on the Jubi, but it was obvious that Watergate couldn't continue to use the Flying Thunder God Jutsu to return to the position where he just appeared on the Jubi and give Uchiha Obito time to react. At this moment, the most important thing for Watergate to do is to quickly approach Uchiha Obito and defeat Uchiha Obito directly. When Watergate's figure reappeared, he appeared directly behind Uchiha Obito. When Nine Tails invaded the Woodleaf village, Watergate directly imprinted the mark of the Flying Thunder God on Uchiha Obito's neck. As long as he can still sense the existence of this mark, he can directly use the Flying Thunder God Jutsu to come to Uchiha Obito's side, but after Uchiha Obito failed to control Nine Tails to attack the Woodleaf village, Watergate could no longer sense this mark. But when Watergate and Uchiha Obito quickly approached each other, Watergate was very sensitive to the spatial fluctuations from the mark he left on Uchiha Obito. It seems that after Uchiha Obito failed to attack the Woodleaf village, he realized that there was a mark of the Flying Thunder God on his body and immediately used some means to hide this mark. But now, for some reason, Watergate could sense it again, but since he can now perceive such a condition that can provide him with an advantage, Watergate will naturally not give up. Even if there may be a trap set by Uchiha Obito, Watergate is confident that he can defeat Uchiha Obito before Uchiha Obito uses the so-called trap. Senjutsu, Futon, Rasengan. The powerful chakra ball surrounded by air directly attacked Uchiha Obito's body, but at this moment, Uchiha Obito did not make any move to dodge at all. Instead, it was as I expected. Chapter 664. Sure enough, the senjutsu in Watergate's hand directly penetrated Uchiha Obito's body. But because it was an attack from above, and the distance was very close, Watergate didn't stop his attack. The Rasengan in his hand directly hit the body of the Jubi, and a huge smoke rose and directly covered Uchiha Obito and Watergate. At the moment when the smoke was produced, a whirlpool suddenly appeared in the middle of the smoke, as if something was absorbing all the smoke. In a moment, the body of Uchiha Obito and Watergate disappeared along with the smoke. Obviously, Uchiha Obito used his Mangekyo Dojutsu, Kamui, to directly absorb himself and Watergate into Kamui's dimension. In Kamui's dimension, Watergate was holding a special three-pronged kunai in his hand at the moment, looking at Uchiha Obito who was standing opposite him with a dignified face. "Obito, what do you want to do?" Looking at Uchiha Obito, Watergate's eyes were filled with murderous intent. Obviously, he was waiting for Uchiha Obito's answer. Once Uchiha Obito said something that might arouse Watergate's killing intent, then Watergate will definitely directly attack his former student. "Watergate, sensei, I know that some of the things I have done have indeed disappointed you, but these are not my original intention. I hope you can give me a chance to explain." Looking at Watergate, Uchiha Obito suddenly called out, "Sensei." When he said that he couldn't control himself, Uchiha Obito's eyes contained a thick sadness that was difficult to eliminate. The ninja world is full of deception. Watergate has seen many ninjas with excellent acting skills, but the sadness that emerged from Uchiha Obito's eyes at this moment is completely real. Although Watergate forced himself to make his heart cold, the person standing in front of him is after all his former student. Even now, in fact, Watergate's heart missed the time when he led Uchiha Obito, Hatake Kakashi, and Harano Rin. Looking at the present, although Hatake Kakashi looks good, he has been immersed in the sadness of losing two teammates. Uchiha Obito directly stood on the opposite side of the entire ninja world, and Harano Rin has lost her life early. Every night, when Watergate recalled his students, he couldn't help but have some doubts in his heart. Is he really not suitable to be a sensei? His disciples have become like this. Now when he heard Uchiha Obito say that he couldn't control himself, Watergate's heart inevitably has some emotions of hope. he hopes that Uchiha Obito really did all kinds of evil things because he couldn't control himself. Seeing the obvious intention in Watergate's eyes, Uchiha Obito knew that his sensei was willing to listen to him. So after a little silence, Uchiha Obito said to Watergate, "After that battle, half of my body was directly smashed by the rocks, but at that time, I didn't immediately lose my life. I believe that Sensei has also seen the ability of White Zetsu. At that time, I was directly taken by White Zetsu to a cave where Uchiha Madara was hiding. When I woke up, my body had already been transformed by Uchiha Madara into what it is now." After saying that, Uchiha Obito also pushed up his sleeves a little, revealing his gray body that was very similar to White Zetsu's clone body. But only for a moment, Uchiha Obito put down his sleeves. It seems that he also didn't like that his body was transformed like this. Then Uchiha Obito continued, "Not only was my body transformed like this, but in order to prevent me from rebelling, Uchiha Madara also implanted a ban in my heart. As long as I do anything, the ban in my heart will directly explode, and then take my life." At this point, Uchiha Obito didn't continue to talk. After all, by saying this, he had already provided an indestructible reason for Uchiha Obito's actions. "My own life was threatened, and in order to save my life, I continued to do so many things that were not from my heart. As for why I still carried out my plan so faithfully after Uchiha Madara died? During the battle with Uchiha Madara, Watergate saw the human-like Black Zetsu. This person was obviously the person who replaced Uchiha Madara to supervise Uchiha Obito. As long as Uchiha Obito made any rebellious action, then Black Zetsu would directly activate the ban to take away Uchiha Obito's life. Uchiha Obito was extremely proficient in the way of talking with people. Although he didn't say it clearly, he directly expressed his hatred for Uchiha Madara and his anger for his life being controlled by others. But Watergate wasn't an emotional person after all. After hearing Uchiha Obito's explanation, he didn't naively think that Uchiha Obito was really an innocent existence. He still held the kunai tightly in his hand. "Minato-sensei, the reason why I'm telling you so much isn't to beg for your forgiveness. It's because I know that although many of the things I've done in the past few years weren't out of my own heart, what's done is done. So, my only hope now is that you can kill me here. Letting my teacher end my sinful life is also a good ending. This is my only request." Looking at Watergate, Uchiha Obito directly and slowly opened his arms, directly facing Watergate without any defense. To be honest, Watergate already believed Uchiha Obito's words when he saw Uchiha Obito open his arms without any defense. But after all, Uchiha Obito had done too many wrong things. If it was just for his own personal feelings, Watergate actually hoped to let Uchiha Obito go. But Watergate was a person who cared more about public interests than personal interests. Since Uchiha Obito had admitted his identity as a sinner, then he should naturally give his student the punishment he deserved. Chapter 665. Obito. As your sensei, I am very pleased to see you have such an awakening performance. I can see the sadness and anger in your eyes, and these two emotions are not fake at all. But I am not only your sensei, I am also the Hokage of the Woodleaf Village in the Land of Fire, a ninja in the world of ninja. What you have done, whether it is your intention or not, has caused too much damage to the entire ninja world. So, I agree to your request. Whether it is your sin or your unwillingness, it will come to an end at this moment." Looking at Uchiha Obito, Watergate forcibly suppressed the deep sadness in his heart, and said to Uchiha Obito with a serious expression. Listening to Watergate's sad but particularly resolute words, Uchiha Obito just opened his arms a little wider, as if in this way to tell Watergate his determination. Slowly walking to Uchiha Obito's side, Watergate slowly raised the trident in his hand. Tightly holding the trident, Watergate's hand was slightly trembling in an imperceptible way. Obviously, at this moment, Watergate's heart was very uneasy. After all, the person standing in front of him at this moment was his student, and this student's heart was full of regret for what he had done. Killing such a student with his own hands was also a kind of torture for Watergate himself. Obito. I'm sorry, as a ninja, as the leader of the ninja world, I have to kill you here. May your soul be able to rest in peace when you go to the Pure Land. Watergate silently prayed for Obito in his heart, and the trident in his hand directly pierced Uchiha Obito's heart. Watergate's movement was very fast, almost in an instant, he directly pierced Uchiha Obito's heart. Perhaps Watergate hoped that he could be more stable and accurate, so that Obito would suffer less before he died. Puff! Watergate directly pulled out the kunai he pierced into Obito's body, and a lot of blood directly gushed out from the wound in front of Obito's heart. But strangely, not only blood flowed out of Obito's wound, but also some flesh fragments. As a ninja, Watergate naturally recognized that these fragments were actually part of Obito's heart. But Watergate didn't pour his chakra into the kunai, nor did he deliberately twist his kunai to directly crush Obito's heart, he just inserted a sharp blade to pierce Obito's heart. Seeing such a scene, Watergate's heart suddenly flashed a trace of vigilance. He directly pulled away from Uchiha Obito, and looked at Uchiha Obito with vigilance, as if he felt that he had fallen into a well-planned trap. Uchiha Obito's face was full of pain and sadness, but at this moment, all the sadness and pain disappeared from Uchiha Obito's face, and only a crazy grin could be seen on Uchiha Obito's face. Sure enough. I was still deceived by you. With a wry smile on his face, Watergate looked at Uchiha Obito, who just maintained a grin on his face without saying a word. Deceive? No, how can this be regarded as deceiving? Didn't you already pierce my heart, my Watergate-sensei? Uchiha Obito looked at Watergate and pointed to the wound in front of his heart, as if to ask Watergate if this wound wasn't caused by him. My heart is indeed sealed, and I am indeed full of hatred and anger for Uchiha Madara. These are all true, and I believe that with Sensei's care, you can naturally understand. Uchiha Madara and I are not the same kind of people. He wants to resurrect the Jubi because of the so-called noble pursuit. But I am not, I am simply too disappointed in the current ninja world. So the reason why I resurrected the Jubi and performed the infinite Tsukuyomi is actually to reshape the ninja world. Even if it is false, it is the peace that countless ninjas want, isn't it? My wish is actually such a simple thing. So in order to achieve my wish, the seal on my heart must not be left, but I can't break such a seal by myself, so I still have to thank Watergate-sensei for leaving a scar on the seal, so I have the opportunity to directly break such a seal. In order to thank you for your help, please continue to stay in this Kamui space. Maybe Watergate-sensei will be the only poor person who doesn't fall into the infinite Tsukuyomi. Looking at Watergate, Uchiha Obito said with great interest to Watergate. Although the main reason for the tragedy at the beginning was the attack of the Rock Village, if Watergate's reaction was faster, he wouldn't have been kidnapped by Uchiha Madara. Even after such a thing happened to him, Watergate didn't pay much attention to his disciple, so Harano Rin directly lost her life in the battle between the ninja villages, and was even killed by Kakashi himself. Over the years, Uchiha Obito also found some clues. Such an incident must have involved a lot of schemes from Uchiha Madara. But Watergate, as a teacher, didn't protect his student, which was a dereliction of duty. Just think about it, the whole ninja world has fallen into an illusory world, and only Watergate will live in it, suffering infinite pain and suffering. Such a scene was just imagined by Uchiha Obito, and it made his body tremble with excitement. Space ripples quickly generated in the Kamui space, and Uchiha Obito directly left the Kamui space. Watergate looked at the Kamui space and began to try his best to contact the Flying Thunder God kunai that he scattered in the ninja world, wanting to leave this place that belonged to Uchiha Obito through the Flying Thunder God technique. But obviously, Uchiha Obito has also considered the possibility of Watergate using the Flying Thunder God technique to leave the Kamui space, so he directly put a lot of chakra into the Kamui space to isolate the connection between the Kamui space and the ninja world. Chapter 666. In the air, a space vortex suddenly appeared, and Uchiha Obito appeared from it. At this moment, Uchiha Madara has been controlling the huge summoned beasts summoned by Jubi and Sannin, the familiar beast summoned by Nangongja, the complete Susanoo cast by Uchiha Sasuke, and the 9 tails and Hachibi incarnations of Naruto and Killer Bee. Although the power of the Jubi has gradually improved due to the passage of time, Madara didn't dare to slack off in the face of powerful giant summoned beasts or ninjutsu. Seeing Uchiha Obito suddenly appear beside him, Uchiha Madara just glanced at him casually. After seeing that Bo Fong and Watergate didn't come back with him, he ignored Uchiha Obito. Although Uchiha Obito seemed to have some injuries, he didn't think that Uchiha Obito would break his heart to remove the seal. Uchiha Obito's condition is very bad. After all, his heart was directly broken. The reason why Uchiha Obito can still move now is that his body is transplanted with Senju Takuma's clone cells, which is full of vitality. When he appeared on the Jubi, Uchiha Obito immediately connected himself with the Jubi. Because of the existence of Uchiha Madara, Uchiha Obito began to secretly extract vitality from the Jubi's body to carefully repair his body. Boom! Suddenly, the sound of the Jubi falling to the ground spread throughout the battlefield. Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Obito, who were on the Jubi's body, clearly felt that the Jubi's body tilted a little bit. At this moment, one of the Jubi's legs has been cut off. Without the support of one leg, the Jubi's body naturally tilted directly. The one who cut off the Jubi's leg was not someone else, but Nangongja and Uchiha Sasuke. Although the other powerhouses who attacked the Jubi's limbs were also very hard, the Jubi's resistance to ninjutsu has reached a terrifying level. After the powerful ninjutsu attack hit the Jubi's body, it had little effect. On the contrary, Nangongja used his sword energy and Ryo's Black Thunder to attack the Jubi's body, and Uchiha Sasuke also used his Susanoo's chakra to directly cut the Jubi's body. After the joint attack, the Jubi's body finally couldn't withstand Uchiha Sasuke's and Nangongja's attack. Seeing that the Jubi was injured, Uchiha Madara's expression also became very ugly. After all, the Jubi was an important tool in Uchiha Madara's plan. After suffering such a trauma, Uchiha Madara's heart was also very uncomfortable. After taking a look at Uchiha Obito, Uchiha Madara directly said to Uchiha Obito, "You control the Jubi first, I'll go and get rid of those annoying bugs below." After that, regardless of what kind of reaction Obito had, Uchiha Madara directly cut off the connection between himself and the Jubi, and jumped in the direction of Nangongja and Sasuke. Seeing that Uchiha Madara didn't care about him at all, Uchiha Obito suddenly felt a little happy. For the first time, Uchiha Obito was glad that Uchiha Madara regarded him as a small character that can be controlled at will. "Since in your eyes, I'm just an ordinary small character, a clone that you can control at will, then I'll let you see how powerful a small character like me can be." Seeing that Madara was already some distance away from him, Obito began to make hand seals. He didn't make hand seals as fast as he usually does. At this moment, although Obito's hand was constantly making hand seals, it was sometimes fast and sometimes slow, with a bit of a magical rhythm. 6 Paths, Jubi Seal Technique. When Uchiha Obito was in Akatsuki, he had been collecting all the information related to the Jubi, but because it was too long ago, and the Jubi itself was a taboo word in the shinobi world, there was almost no written record of it. But once again, Obito accidentally heard from Black Zetsu that sealing the Jubi required a special sealing technique. After searching for a while, he found a scroll that looked quite old in a declining family. It recorded the sealing technique that Obito was using now, the 6 Paths, Jubi Seal Technique. In fact, Uchiha Obito himself wasn't so sure whether such a sealing technique could really exert the effect recorded in the scroll, but now Uchiha Obito wanted to get rid of Uchiha Madara's control, and there was only one way left for him to become the Jubi Column Force. When Uchiha Obito finished a series of hand seals and stopped at the last movement, a strange wave directly spread from Uchiha Obito's body, and then directly spread to the Jubi's body through the connection between him and the Jubi. At this moment, the Jubi seemed to be aware of its fate of being sealed, and it began to struggle violently at this moment, but there was a wooden umbilical cord between the Jubi and Uchiha Obito. Uchiha Obito stood firmly on the Jubi's body. After a while, the sealing technique performed by Uchiha Obito seemed to have begun to work. A vortex suddenly appeared in the abdomen of Uchiha Obito, and the body of the Jubi was directly absorbed by this vortex. Because the body of the Jubi was absorbed, a powerful wave swept the entire battlefield directly. At this moment, Uchiha Madara was already fighting with Nangongja and Sasuke, but the powerful wave produced when the Jubi was absorbed also directly affected Uchiha Madara. Seeing the Jubi being absorbed by Uchiha Obito into his abdomen, Uchiha Madara immediately understood that Uchiha Obito had betrayed him. Although Uchiha Madara always knew that Uchiha Obito would betray him one day, Uchiha Madara didn't expect the betrayal from Uchiha Obito to come so quickly and so suddenly. Chapter 667. The Bijou itself is a creature that contains powerful chakra in its body. Every shinobi village covets the powerful power of the Bijou, so they seal the Bijou in the human body to create a Jinchuriki in order to obtain powerful strength. But even if it's just a Bijou, it requires a person with a special physique and a powerful sealing technique to make the Bijou column force able to use the power of the Bijou. The Jubi itself is the fusion of 9 Bijou. Such an existence is naturally far beyond the Bijou in general knowledge. If one wants to seal the Jubi in his body and become the column force of the Jubi, then this ninja must have a strong physique and will. Aoa-. As the Jubi continued to be sealed in his body, the powerful chakra and mental impact from the Jubi directly played a role on Uchiha Obito's body and mind. Because of such a powerful impact, Uchiha Obito was quite overwhelmed physically and mentally. Black Zetsu was hiding in a dark corner of the battlefield, watching Uchiha Obito seal the Jubi in his body. Black Zetsu is the third son of Otsutsuki Kagaya. Although it seems that Black Zetsu has been loyal to Uchiha Obito and Uchiha Madara, the ultimate purpose of Black Zetsu is to resurrect his mother. The will of the Jubi is actually the will of Otsutsuki Kagaya. Now that Uchiha Obito has absorbed the Jubi into his body, once Uchiha Obito has no way to resist the backlash from the Jubi, then his mother can be resurrected again. Although relatively speaking, it is better to let Uchiha Madara become his mother's vessel. After all, Uchiha Madara himself is in the Edo Tensei mode, so letting Uchiha Obito become the vessel of his mother's resurrection is actually barely possible. This was also a backup plan left behind by Black Zetsu to resurrect his mother. Previously, he deliberately handed over the Jubi seal to Uchiha Obito through a declining family for this purpose. Finally, the Jubi's body was completely absorbed into Uchiha Obito's body. The huge force generated by absorbing the Ten-Tails also disappeared. Without the obstruction of the force and the sand, everyone could see the state of Uchiha. At this moment, Uchiha Obito didn't seem to be in a good condition. After all, in the Kamui space, Uchiha Obito had his heart pierced by Bofong and Watergate. Uchiha Obito had ruthlessly crushed his heart. Although he used the life energy extracted when connecting to the Jubi to repair his body slightly, the repair time was still a little rushed after all, so the recovery couldn't be said to be perfect. At this moment, Obito's body was directly impacted by the huge chakra from the Jubi's body, and the wounds that had just been repaired were now torn open again. Not only that, at this moment, Uchiha Obito's eyes, nostrils, ears, and mouth were slowly oozing blood, and his whole body looked miserable and weak. However, in sharp contrast to Uchiha Obito's miserable body at this moment, a powerful aura constantly emerged from Uchiha Obito's body. Obviously, the Jubi that had been absorbed by Uchiha Obito was constantly transforming Uchiha Obito's body, making Uchiha Obito's body begin to evolve in a direction beyond the human level. Gradually, Uchiha Obito's physical characteristics began to change. The original black short hair at this moment had turned white, and Uchiha Obito's skin color was also changing to a gray-white color similar to White Zetsu's clone. The navy blue robe on Uchiha Obito's body was suddenly broken by the powerful chakra that emerged from Uchiha Obito's body, and the gray-white body began to gradually change shape. A robe-like clothes extended from Uchiha Obito's body, and a pair of short sharp horns appeared on Uchiha Obito's forehead. Obito's miserable roar gradually weakened, and the blood flowing on his cheeks was gradually absorbed by Uchiha Obito's skin. Obito's body that was half-squatting due to the pain slowly stood up at this moment, and as Obito's body stood upright, a coat of arms formed by the seal of Magatama appeared on Uchiha Obito's back. Is this the Jubi's column force? Looking at Uchiha Obito who stood up, Naruto also looked at Uchiha Obito's magical posture with a sluggish look. For some reason, Naruto couldn't help but feel a familiar aura from Uchiha Obito, as if he had felt such an existence beyond human beings from there. Sure enough, the incomplete Jubi can only do this much. Unlike Naruto and the others who were amazed, Black Zetsu looked at Uchiha Obito's body with a bit of disappointment. In the chakra of the nine-tailed beasts, it actually contains the will of his mother, Otsutsuki Kagaya. The so-called resurrection of Jubi is actually to gather Otsutsuki Kagaya's consciousness again, and then resurrect her. But now, because of the lack of Hachibi and Nine Tails' power, and Jubi has not fully recovered at this moment, it is still difficult for Jubi to control Uchiha Obito with only incomplete power. At this moment, although Uchiha Obito has the appearance of Jubi's column force, to be honest, there is still a big gap between him and the real Jubi. Looking at Nangongja, Uchiha Sasuke, and Ai, Terumi Mei, and Woodleaf Sannin, Black Zetsu made a general estimation and found that if Uchiha Obito's strength alone, it is still possible to defeat them. It seems that in the end, I still have to find a way to resurrect Uchiha Madara and collect the power of the other two-tailed beasts to have a chance to resurrect my mother? Thinking of this, Black Zetsu's body, which was originally hidden in the dark corner, directly melted into the ground and disappeared. Black Zetsu is very clear that his strength is actually very limited. What he can do now is to find the opportunity to plunder the chakra of Hachibi and Nine Tails, help Uchiha Madara resurrect, and then use Uchiha Madara as a vessel to resurrect his mother. Although it seems a little complicated, Black Zetsu has also been in the shinobi world for so many years. In order to resurrect his mother, Black Zetsu doesn't think that this little wait is unacceptable. Chapter 668. Uchiha Obito stood up straight, but he didn't immediately start his action. He closed his eyes tightly, as if he was familiarizing himself with the changes in his body. Uchiha Madara and the rest of the ninja allied forces didn't immediately take action. After all, this was the first time for everyone to face the Jubi's Jinchuriki, an existence beyond the level of human life. Although they didn't want to admit it, everyone's heart was still full of vigilance. After all, Uchiha Obito's body at this moment was a powerful oppression beyond their level of life. Just when everyone's eyes were full of seriousness, suddenly a chuckle spread directly across the battlefield. Although the sound was very soft, everyone heard it very clearly. This was Uchiha Obito's laughter, and it became more and more crazy. In the end, Uchiha Obito couldn't even control his body. He covered his cheeks with his hands, and his shoulders began to shake quickly. This is power. This is the breath of freedom. It's really fascinating, I like it. Holding his hands tightly in front of himself, Uchiha Obito's eyes were full of a strange intoxication. Now Uchiha Obito could feel the explosive power in his body. Even the strongest Uchiha Madara could be seen through at a glance in front of Uchiha Obito. But at this moment, Uchiha Obito didn't have the mind to pay attention to Uchiha Madara. In Uchiha Obito's body, the Jubi was constantly conveying a strong desire to Uchiha Obito. The Jubi was eager to recover, and Uchiha Obito was eager to become stronger. The thing that can make Uchiha Obito more powerful is the Hachibi and Nine Tails sealed in Killer Bee's body. As long as he can directly plunder these two-tailed beasts into his body, then he can become an existence completely beyond human beings. From then on, he will be the only true god in the world. When Uchiha Obito turned his eyes to Killer Bee and Uzumaki Naruto and Killer Bee couldn't help but tremble. Obito's undisguised desire and threat to their lives made Uzumaki Naruto and Killer Bee nervous. Uchiha Madara looked at Uchiha Obito, who stole the fruit of his victory, and his eyes were full of anger. He clenched his fists and wanted to fight with Uchiha Obito, but suddenly his frowning brows loosened, as if someone was persuading Uchiha Madara. After a while, although Uchiha Madara's eyes were still full of anger, it was obvious that Uchiha Madara had become sober at this moment, and his eyes were full of clarity. "I'll let you be arrogant for a while." "Humph." Uchiha Madara glanced at Uchiha Obito and directly used the body flicker technique to leave the battlefield. Although the battlefield was surrounded by the four red flame formation at this moment, Uchiha Madara's figure disappeared. Watching Uchiha Madara disappear, the strong ninjas of the ninja allied forces also suddenly relaxed. After all, Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Obito belonged to the same camp. The strength of Uchiha Madara is obvious to all. If Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Obito, who has become the leader of the Ten Tails Column Force, unite, then no one can stop the two of them. Because of the departure of Uchiha Madara, everyone's heart was slightly relaxed, but Uchiha Obito suddenly launched his own action. Uchiha Obito's body suddenly floated directly against the laws of physics. Unlike Sandaime Tsuchikage super light rock technique, Uchiha Obito flew directly as if by instinct, and his movement speed was not low. There were even afterimages in the air because of the high-speed movement. Almost in an instant, Uchiha Obito's figure directly appeared in the camp of the ninja allied forces. In an instant, Uchiha Obito launched the power of the outer path, and a black iron rod appeared in his hand. Although it looked not much different from the black iron rod that was shaped before he became the leader of the Ten Tails Column Force, it contained the power of the outer path in the Rinnegan and the powerful chakra in the Ten Tails body. Whether it was the hardness or the degree of disturbance to the chakra, it was far more than the previous black iron rod. Uchiha Obito waved the black iron rod in his hand casually, and Terumi Mei, who was the fifth-generation Mizukage, was directly hit by Uchiha Obito. When he hit Terumi Mei, the power of the outer path and the Ten Tails chakra in the iron rod directly invaded her body. The two powerful forces directly blocked the meridians in her body, and at the same time, Terumi Mei also directly lost her combat power. What Uchiha Obito wanted to do at this moment was to use the fastest speed to make everyone in the ninja allied forces lose their combat power, except for the Hachibi and the Nine Tails Column Force. Only in this way can he directly absorb the power of the Hachibi and the Nine Tails into his body without any hindrance. After hitting Terumi Mei, Uchiha Obito did not stop his attack. He directly turned around and directly attacked the fourth-generation Raikage AI with the black iron rod in his hand. Compared to the ninjutsu-type Terumi Mei, AI, who was proficient in taijutsu, reacted faster. When he saw Obito attacking him, he immediately crossed his arms in front of his chest to protect himself. But obviously, AI still underestimated the power of Uchiha Obito after he became the Ten Tails Column Force. The black iron rod wrapped in a huge force directly hit AI's arms. AI has stimulated his Raitun chakra mode to the extreme, and his body was wrapped in powerful thunder, constantly stimulating his body. But after receiving Uchiha Obito's attack, AI's body directly flew out like Terumi Mei. Due to the invasion of Geto's power and Jubi's chakra, the lightning covering his body went out of control. Even though he was proficient in lightning ninjutsu, his whole body was scorched black by the raging lightning chakra. Chapter 669. Uchiha Obito relied on his ascended physical fitness and strength to directly defeat the two powerhouses in the ninja allied forces camp in a very short time, making them lose their combat power, but the time to defeat these two powerhouses also gave the remaining people time to react. After Terumi Mei and they were defeated, only would Leaf San Ninjiraya, Orochimaru, Tsunade, Nangongja, Uchiha Sasuke from the Bloodcloak Pavilion Camp, and Killer Bee and Uzumaki Naruto as column force. Among these remaining people, there are many people with outstanding melee abilities. However, Tsunade and Jiraiya themselves have been away from the battlefield for many years. Now they suddenly participate in the war. Although they are mentally prepared, their bodies are still slightly lacking. Uzumaki Naruto and Killer Bee's fighting style is also based on taijutsu and ninjutsu, but Naruto and Bee are not only ninjas, but also column force with tailed beasts sealed in their bodies. As the target of Uchiha Obito, the two of them naturally can't join the battle so casually. In this way, in the end, Uchiha Sasuke and Nangongja came directly in front of Uchiha Obito with long swords in their hands to block Uchiha Obito. Uchiha Sasuke once received Nangongja's swordsmanship guidance when he was young. Although he slowly formed a set of swordsmanship with his own characteristics with the accumulation of his own experience, after all, it was still born from the swordsmanship taught by Nangongja. So at this moment, the cooperation between Nangongja and Uchiha Sasuke can be said to be very tacit. Sasuke's sword was attached with a layer of sword light formed by Chakra's simulated internal force. The originally silver sword looked more dazzling at this moment. At this moment, Nangongja poured a large amount of internal energy into the Calamity sword in his hand. The deep black color of the Calamity sword mixed with the crystal clear blue of his internal energy, giving it a mysterious feeling. Because Sasuke's sword light can only extend a short distance, Nangongja himself can directly use sword energy to extend the attack range. So when facing Uchiha Obito, Sasuke in front and Nangongja in the back attacked Uchiha Obito. Sasuke relied on his sword skills and fighting awareness to block Uchiha Obito with difficulty. Nangongja relied on his powerful attack ability to constantly move, or cooperate with Uchiha Sasuke to block Uchiha Obito, or attack Uchiha Obito's exposed weaknesses. After all, the Jubi in Uchiha Obito's body was in an incomplete state, so in many ways, Uchiha Obito's Six Paths mode was actually flawed. Now Nangongja relied on his own sword energy, Uchiha Sasuke relied on his own sword light to directly block Uchiha Obito's attack. As the battle continued, Uchiha Obito's mood became more and more impatient. After all, Uchiha Obito didn't expect that he would be entangled in the face of Uchiha Sasuke and Nangongja's pincer attack. Jubi. Jubi. Your power isn't just like this, I know. Give me more power, I am you, and you are me. Now we are humiliated, is this what you want to see? Uchiha Obito roared silently in his heart, seemingly hoping to let Jubi feel his will in this way. Perhaps Uchiha Obito's strong will was really perceived by Jubi, or Jubi regained some of its power in Uchiha Obito's body. Several spikes that didn't look so sharp began to slowly protrude from Uchiha Obito's back. With the emergence of 5 spike-shaped scales, a black sphere also emerged directly from Uchiha Obito's body, and hung behind Uchiha Obito. The pinkish flame was burning at the tip of the scales, and the aura of destruction was directly emitted from these pinkish flames. This is the six-path immortal fire chakra that belongs to the six-path mode. Slowly opening his hand, the black substance continued to condense in Obito's hand, and the truth-seeking ball floating behind Obito also directly rushed into such a mass of black substance. Gradually, a strange-looking long sword was formed in a sequence similar to DNA. It was the legendary sword used by the six-path Sennin when he created the first land, the Heavenly Swamp Spear. However, these are all legends. In fact, before the birth of the six-path Sennin, land already existed in the ninja world. However, even though it was just a rumor, the power contained within such a weapon was real and undeniable. The Heavenly Swamp Spear itself has another name, the Sword of the Heart. The stronger the user's heart, the more powerful this sword is. Holding the Heavenly Swamp Spear in one hand, Uchiha Obito waved the long black greatsword in his hand. Whether it is a paranoid heart, a kind heart, or a brave heart, as long as it is a heart, it can become the existence that supports the Heavenly Swamp Spear. At this moment, Uchiha Obito's twisted and paranoid heart became the power that supports the heavenly swamp spear. At this moment, the heavenly swamp spear was full of powerful momentum and oppression. Just by waving it casually, it directly broke the joint attack of Nangongja and Uchiha Sasuke. Nangongja's Heaven's Disaster Sword was made of special materials, so when it collided with such a legendary weapon, it wasn't affected too much. However, Uchiha Sasuke's silver longsword was just an ordinary weapon with excellent craftsmanship and high-quality materials. Even after being nourished by Uchiha Sasuke's fake sword chi for so many years, this longsword was still just an ordinary weapon that was sharpened by a lot. The moment the silver longsword and the heavenly swamp spear collided, the silver longsword directly broke, and the metal fragments splashed everywhere under the huge impact. A few fragments even directly scratched Uchiha Sasuke's cheek, and a few blood marks appeared on his cheek, but Uchiha Sasuke didn't notice it at all. Although Uchiha Sasuke never gave his longsword a name, but after countless battles and countless days of being together, Uchiha Sasuke was still full of feelings for this ordinary longsword. Suddenly, his longsword directly broke, which made Uchiha Sasuke somewhat difficult to accept. Chapter 670. Good Opportunity. Seeing that Sasuke suddenly fell into a trance, Uchiha Obito's eyes flashed with a glimmer of light at the moment. The confrontation between Uchiha Obito and Nangongja made Obito's heart full of anxiety. Although the feedback of Jubi's power made his body and strength stronger, such strength couldn't be reciprocated to his spirit, so Uchiha Obito's impatience didn't reduce at all. Seeing that Uchiha Sasuke became absent-minded because of his broken long sword, Uchiha Obito also immediately waved the Tenma spear in his hand towards Uchiha Sasuke. Although Nangongja was very close to Uchiha Sasuke, the blow that he took just now directly made Nangongja's hand slightly numb, and the blood in his body couldn't calm down for a long time. How can he block Uchiha Obito's swift blow for Sasuke in such a state? Just when Nangongja was still trying to adjust his body's state, hoping to help Uchiha Sasuke block this blow, suddenly a golden figure directly blocked in front of Uchiha Sasuke. Tenma spear won't stop its attack voluntarily because of who it is attacking, and everyone present is actually an enemy to Uchiha Obito. In that case, why should he care about who he is attacking? As long as he can defeat the person he is attacking, it doesn't matter who it is. The golden figure was naturally no one else, it was Uzumaki Naruto in Kurama mode. With the emergence of chakra on his body to form a giant hand, Naruto obviously hoped that he could block this blow for his best friend Uchiha Sasuke. However, Naruto still underestimated the power and sharpness of Tenma spear. Obviously, the giant hand condensed with chakra was easily cut open like soft tofu in front of Tenma spear. Tenma spear itself was a strange and huge long sword. When it broke through the giant hand formed by Nine Tails chakra, it also directly attacked Naruto's body. Although Naruto's body was covered with a golden windbreaker condensed from Nine Tails chakra, the giant hand condensed with a high concentration of chakra couldn't block this blow, and the relatively weaker chakra windbreaker naturally couldn't block this blow. The sharp, Tenma spear blade directly cut through the golden chakra windbreaker and cut Naruto's body. Naruto's body was made of flesh and blood. The moment he was cut, an intense pain directly transmitted to Naruto's brain. When he was in Kurama mode, Naruto's own pain nerves were greatly weakened. But at this moment, his abdomen was cut, and the wound wasn't very deep, but it already made Naruto feel the pain. He tightly clenched his teeth to prevent himself from screaming, but a trace of wailing still squeezed out from Naruto's teeth. His tightly clenched gums also oozed blood. Seemingly aware that Naruto suddenly appeared in front of him was attacked, Uchiha Sasuke, who was still a bit absent-minded, finally recovered his consciousness. Naruto. You. Looking at Uzumaki Naruto's face full of pain, Uchiha Sasuke couldn't help but feel deeply moved and proud in his heart. After all, in this world, there is a person who risked his life to save you. Having such a friend is worthy of anyone's pride and gratitude. Seeing that Sasuke seemed to have recovered his consciousness, Naruto also suddenly smiled. That bright smile directly washed away the originally distorted expression on his face. Attaching the Nine Tails chakra to his palm, Naruto directly grabbed the blade of Sky Swamp Spear and fiercely pushed such a weapon out of his body. A large amount of blood directly sprayed on the ground. Naruto's blood actually dyed the ground red. With Naruto's current state in Kurama mode, he could actually quickly recover from his injuries, but because the weapon that attacked Naruto was not an ordinary weapon, but the Sky Swamp Spear of Hagoromo Sennin, Naruto's wound was still not fully recovered. Sasuke. Although you seem to be a lot stronger, you still make people worry about you. In the end, you still need me to save you. Remember this favor of mine. Although Naruto said that he wanted Uchiha to remember his kindness and also ridiculed Sasuke, whether it was Naruto or Sasuke, both of them knew very well that Naruto rushed forward to protect Sasuke because he saw Sasuke in danger. I don't need you to help me. Over the years, Sasuke's personality had indeed improved a lot, but when facing Naruto, who was familiar with him, Sasuke couldn't help but be stubborn. It seemed that this was the way Sasuke and Naruto got along. They didn't want to deal with each other, but when something really happened, Naruto and Sasuke could bear any risk for each other. Hey. Now is not the time for you two to chat. I'm in a hurry to collect Hachibi and Nine Tails. This kind of cliché story between you two should be staged elsewhere. When Naruto used his own body to block such a blow for Sasuke, Uchiha actually had the opportunity to attack Naruto again with the Tenma spear that had pierced into Naruto's body. But when he saw Naruto block this blow for Sasuke, he couldn't help but think of the scene where he was willing to be crushed by the boulder in order to let Kakashi live. Yes. Was he really willing to do that? It was because he saw Naruto block this blow for Sasuke that Obito recalled his past experience and shook Uchiha Obito's heart, so Uchiha Obito didn't continue to attack with the Tenma spear in his hand. Tenma spear was a sword of the soul. Because of the strength of the soul, Tenma spear could obtain unparalleled sharpness and hardness, and because of the shaking of the soul, Tenma spear would also lose its powerful strength. Chapter 671. After so many years, Uchiha Obito has been tormented by everything that happened back then, so Obito's heart couldn't help but be shaken by what happened between Naruto and Sasuke. After all, Obito back then was too similar to the current Naruto, wasn't it? But the shaking of his mind was only a temporary situation because Obito has found a way to make up for everything. As long as he can successfully perform infinite Tsukuyomi, then everything he lost will be taken back. Although everything in Tsukuyomi world is actually fake, even so, it is much better than facing the cold reality. In fact, Uchiha Obito's heart has never grown because from the beginning to the end, Uchiha Obito has been running away, hasn't he? But no matter whether Uchiha Obito chooses to run away or face it, with such a deformed will, Uchiha Obito has re-evaluated his heart. Once again, he controlled Tenma Swamp Spear to slash in Naruto's direction, but a huge short sword directly blocked the attack path of Tenma Swamp Spear. Although this huge short sword was also made of ordinary materials, it was too large after all, so Tenma Swamp Spear was also blocked before it could cut off such a long sword. I say, Jiraiya kid, for you, I scrapped the weapon that has accompanied me for many years. When you go back, remember to give me an identical sword. Also, get me some good wine. Consider it as making up for my loss, okay? A huge voice sounded. Looking at the voice, the giant summon beast summoned by Jiraiya with summoning jutsu, Gamabunta complained to Jiraiya on top of his head. When Jiraiya heard Gamabunta's words, he immediately nodded and said to Gamabunta, of course, whether it is a short sword or good wine, I will send it to you later. Although Jiraiya agreed quickly, looking at the two pieces of the short sword in Gamabunta's huge body, he couldn't help but have a big cold sweat on his forehead. Where am I going to find someone to help me make such a big sword? How much good wine do I have to drink to fill Gamabunta's stomach? This was really a bit difficult to deal with. Just when Jiraiya was scratching his head helplessly, Orochimaru controlled Manda and came to Jiraiya's side. Before Orochimaru could speak, Manda took the initiative to look at Gamabunta with a look of disdain. "You stinky toad, you're really stingy. Can you please stop showing off your existence with this idiot Jiraiya?" The Snake Dowager's voice was rather sinister. When she said such mocking words, it was naturally very ear-piercing. After hearing the Snake Dowager's words, Toad Gamata couldn't help but feel angry. The Toad clan of Mount Mayabu and the Snake clan of the Earth Dragon Cave had a huge conflict of views. Now that he was directly choked by the Snake clan, Toad Wentai couldn't help but feel a little angry. "Stop messing around, you two. We still have a powerful enemy in front of us. No matter what, let's defeat this powerful enemy in front of us first." Seeing Manda and Toad Gamata's swords drawn, Tsunade's summoned beast Katsuyu also directly stepped forward to dissuade them. She didn't know if Manda and Toad Gamata finally found a way out after hearing Katsuyu's words or something else. Anyway, the two huge summoned beasts stared at each other, and the matter just now was left unsettled. Looking at the scene of Manda and Toad Gamata talking back, Tsunade couldn't help but smile a little. After all, when she, Jiraiya, and Orochimaru fought together in the shinobi world, such a scene happened from time to time. Being able to see such a scene really made Tsunade very happy. "Enough nonsense, Naruto, you step back first. You are the target of Uchiha Obito, and now Uchiha Madara's whereabouts are unknown. Your biggest task now is not to help us fight, but to protect yourself with Killer Bee, so that they can't collect your chakra, and the Eye of the Moon project will be delayed." It has to be said that among the Sannin, Tsunade herself is also a ninja with a great view of the overall situation. At this moment, seeing that Naruto blocked the attack for Sasuke, she immediately advised Naruto. She didn't want Naruto to directly fight with a Jubi column force like Uchiha Obito. Naruto's mother, Uzumaki Shina Kushina, had a very good relationship with Tsunade. Naruto could still hear Tsunade's words, so although he was still a little unwilling in his heart, Naruto already knew that this was not the time for him to be willful, and he quickly retreated to Killer Bee's side. "Boss Toad, are you ready?" Jiraiya suddenly asked Gamabunta under him. After glancing at Manda, Gamabunta said to Jiraiya, "That's right. Of course, I won't lose the face of Mount Mayaboku in front of this bug." Listening to Gamabunta's somewhat hostile words, Jiraiya's mouth also slightly smiled, and he didn't take these words to heart. His hands quickly formed a seal, and a ninjutsu was quickly completed, combination ninjutsu, Katan, Toad Flame Bullet. Jiraiya spat out a raging fire from his mouth, and a slightly turbid oil column rushed out from Gamabunta's mouth. When the flame met the oil column, it directly ignited the oil column. At this moment, the flame directly splashed in the direction of Uchiha Obito like a liquid. Looking at the raging flame rushing towards him, Uchiha Obito had no intention of dodging at all, as if the raging flame rushing towards him was just a slight breeze in the slightly sultry summer afternoon air. The Tenma spear in his hand quickly disintegrated and turned back into truth-seeking balls suspended behind Uchiha Obito. Several truth-seeking balls seemed to have a faint fluctuation, and the fluctuation was like a tide getting stronger and stronger, and it hit the Toad Flame Bullet cast by Jiraiya. After the Toad Flame Bullet's liquid flame hit the Toad Flame Bullet, the flame directly disappeared out of thin air, and a large amount of Toad Flame Bullet that was not completely burned directly flew in all directions. The originally aggressive attack was directly annihilated. Chapter 672. Ninjutsu has no effect? Seeing that Jiraiya's Toad Oil Bomb was so easily broken by Uchiha Obito, Orochimaru's eyes flashed with a glimmer of light as he stared at Uchiha Obito's body and said excitedly, "Sure enough, Jubi's Jinchuriki is different from ordinary Jinchuriki. According to my research, in fact, the legendary Rikudo Sennin, who is close to the god of creation, is actually the first Jubi column force. Rikudo Sennin himself is the ancestor of ninja. Although ninja has various escape techniques, they can't escape from water, fire, earth, wind, and lightning. When we besieged Jubi just now, I already felt that Jubi's resistance to ninjutsu was too high. Obviously, such powerful ninjutsu directly hit Jubi, but Jubi itself suffered very little damage. In this case, I also began to guess whether ninjutsu is actually ineffective against Jubi or Jubi column force. Now, Jubi column force Uchiha Obito's performance tells us that ninjutsu is indeed useless. But just now, Nangongja and Uchiha Sasuke directly cut off one of Jubi's legs, so it seems that pure physical attacks are actually effective against Jubi. The law of victory is sometimes so simple and easy to understand. Orochimaru didn't hide his voice when he spoke, and these conclusions of Orochimaru's were naturally clearly transmitted to the ninja coalition, Nangongja, Uchiha Sasuke's ears, and everyone's eyes flashed with a look of understanding. Among everyone, Nangongja and Uchiha Sasuke have already shown their powerful melee abilities, but there is also a person who is very proficient in melee attacks among the Sannin, that is, Katsuya Tsunade of the Sannin. In Seal Jutsu, form. Hearing Orochimaru's words, Tsunade also directly lifted her own seal, and a large number of chakra directly emerged from the seal. Tsunade's monstrous strength has always been her main attack method. It's actually a very different attack method from ninjutsu. Although it also uses chakra, this chakra is mainly used on her body. When the In seal on her body was lifted, Tsunade's physical fitness also improved. After borrowing a little strength from Katsuya, Tsunade directly rushed towards Uchiha Obito's direction. Because of Tsunade's speed, there was even a very loud sound in the air. Tensho kick. Tsunade lifted her leg high, and after a short time of charging, she kicked down heavily. But at this moment, Uchiha Obito actually has an extremely powerful speed, and Tsunade's short time in the air actually gave Uchiha Obito a chance to dodge. Tsunade didn't hit her enemy, but she wasn't discouraged. After all, Uchiha Obito is now the Jubi's column force. How powerful such an existence can be is unknown for everyone. This battle wasn't a battle that can be solved quickly, and Tsunade herself was prepared for a long battle. Just as Tsunade used her speed to quickly approach Uchiha Obito, Nangongja and Uchiha Sasuke, who were originally in a state of paralysis, also quickly gathered together at this moment to fight Uchiha Obito together with Tsunade. Seeing Tsunade directly facing Uchiha Obito, Jiraiya naturally jumped directly from Gamabunta's head, and quickly made hand seals to summon Fukasaku Sennin and Shima Sennin from Mount Myaboku. With the cooperation of the two Mount Myaboku Sennin, Jiraiya immediately entered Sage Mode. Although his Sage Mode is not as perfect as Watergate's, after all, this is Sage Mode, which can greatly enhance a person's physical fitness. Monstrous strength, frog hands, and Kenjutsu, these three taijutsu are enough to be called the pinnacle of taijutsu. At this moment, they are fighting Uchiha Obito at the same time. Natural energy condensed in Jiraiya's hand, and Jiraiya punched out directly on Uchiha Obito's body. To everyone's surprise, Uchiha Obito, who was hit, flew out directly. It must be known that since Uchiha Obito became the Jubi's column force, in fact, in the battle against Uchiha Obito, Obito almost didn't retreat a step. Now, Jiraiya actually repelled Uchiha Obito with one punch? Senjutsu, Frog Gauntlet, is a fighting technique that uses natural chakra while in Sage Mode. After listening to Orochimaru's words, Jiraiya's brain turned quickly. Since ordinary ninjutsu basically has no effect on a Jubi's column force like Uchiha Obito, then what about an attack that uses natural energy that is different from ordinary ninjutsu? In fact, when Jiraiya fought Uchiha Obito with frog hands, he was also trying it out. After all, Senjutsu, chakra formed in Sage Mode, still has the name chakra. If Uchiha Obito has a certain resistance to Senjutsu, chakra, Jiraiya was ready to directly exit Sage mode and use ordinary taijutsu to attack Uchiha Obito. But unexpectedly, the effect of Senjutsu, which contains natural energy, was surprisingly good against Uchiha Obito. Seeing that Jiraiya's attack containing natural energy was so effective, Nangongja, who could also use natural energy for his own use, also acted quickly. He injected his internal energy into the Sword of Calamity, using the Sword of Calamity as a bridge to communicate with natural energy. A little bit of green light gathered directly into the Sword of Calamity in Nangongja's hand. Chop! Uchiha Obito was suddenly hit by Jiraiya's attack, and he didn't even react to what was going on. Nangongja directly held his Sword of Calamity. Nangongja guessed that the reason why Jiraiya's attack was so powerful was because of the use of natural energy, so he directly used the Sword of Calamity to shape the blade of the Sword of Calamity and directly slashed towards Uchiha Obito in a strange way. With such a slash, one of the thorny scales that protruded from Uchiha Obito's back was directly cut off. Chapter 673. No one knew the purpose of the scales extending from Uchiha Obito's back, but when Nangongja directly cut off one of the scales, Uchiha Obito's face immediately showed an extremely painful expression. The severe pain even directly made Uchiha Obito's figure retreat a few steps. Under the joint suppression of Tsunade and Uchiha Sasuke, Uchiha Obito's state slightly recovered after a while. Nangongja and Jiraiya looked at each other and immediately understood each other's meaning. After all, among the 4 people who participated in the siege of Uchiha Obito, only Nangongja and Jiraiya could use natural energy to cause damage to Uchiha Obito. Tsunade and Uchiha Sasuke were also people with rich combat experience. At this moment, Nangongja and Jiraiya were actually the key to victory, so Tsunade and Uchiha Sasuke also tried their best to attack, using their taijutsu to constantly entangle Uchiha Obito, forcing Uchiha Obito to reveal his flaws. Nangongja and Jiraiya were on the side, ready to attack when Uchiha Obito revealed his flaws. Although Uchiha Obito at this moment had a strong physique beyond human limits and a huge amount of chakra, compared to the several people who were fighting Uchiha Obito, to be honest, there was a certain gap in combat experience and combat awareness. In such a short time, Nangongja and the others had already found such an effective attack method. Being entangled by Tsunade and Uchiha Sasuke, Nangongja and Jiraiya also constantly used natural energy to attack Uchiha Obito. Seeming to understand the importance of the scales on his shoulder blade, Uchiha Obito also deliberately defended himself. However, even though he was able to defend one place, there was no way to defend the other places. Obito's body also had large and small scars. This situation can't be. After fighting for a while, Uchiha Obito finally realized that the current battle situation couldn't continue. If this continues, then he is likely to be dragged to death by these 4 people. He absolutely can't be delayed here. Now that Jubi in his body is relatively mature, as long as there is the right time, he can directly release part of Jubi's body and rely on Jubi's power to directly project Manjikyu Sharingan directly on the moon to realize the Eye of the Moon project, and then let the entire world enter the world of infinite Tsukuyomi. Originally, Uchiha Obito had 5 scales on his shoulder blade, but because of Nangongja's attack just now, he lost 1 scale, so now only 4 scales are burning with pale pink chakra flames. Activating the burning chakra flames on the 4 scales, several chakra palms were directly formed. Stretching out his hand, the Tenma spear appeared again, and directly forced Nangongja and the other 3 to retreat, and Uchiha Obito also directly suspended in the air with his flying power, out of the attack range of Nangongja and the others. Uchiha Obito twisted his head and looked around. The powerful barrier formed by the first Hokage Senju Takuma, second Hokage Tobirama, 3 generations Hokage Yuan Fei Hiruzen, and 5th Kazekage Gaara was so conspicuous that it directly separated the battlefield from the outside space. In order to perfectly display the power of Jubi, Jubi must have enough chakra to use, such a barrier must not exist. 4 pale pink chakra palms directly stretched out from Uchiha Obito's body. The chakra palms approached the wall formed by the 4 red flame formation at an extremely fast speed, and the palms directly grabbed the wall formed by the barrier. Open for me. Uchiha Obito encouraged his chakra, and the 4 chakra palms immediately began to fiercely drag the wall formed by the 4 red flame formation. Almost instantly, the powerful barrier formed by the 4 Kages was directly torn apart. As the caster of the barrier, the 4 Kages naturally also suffered a certain degree of backlash. Seeing the 4 red yang formation being torn apart, in order to prevent the ninjas of the allied ninjas from escaping, Uchiha Obito quickly condensed 6 black iron rods in his hand with the help of Geto's power. With a casual throw, the 6 iron rods directly enveloped the ninjas of the allied ninjas and the disciples of the Blood Cloak Pavilion. Barrier ninjutsu, it's not only you who can use it. Relying on the faint inheritance that he received after obtaining the power of 6 paths, Uchiha Obito quickly made hand seals. At the same time, the chakra within Uchiha Obito's body directly gushed out with the 6 iron rods as the medium. 6 red yang formation, form. Although the name was somewhat similar to the 4 red yang formation that the 4 Kages used together, the power of the 6 red yang formation and the 4 red yang formation were completely different. The one who used the 4 red yang formation was the most ordinary chakra, but the one who used the 6 red yang formation was the power of 6 paths, which completely surpassed the level of chakra. The suppression from the energy level was also completely reflected in the power of the barrier ninjutsu. The huge range and amazing effect of the 6 red yang formation directly wrapped the entire Ninja Alliance army and the members of the Blood Cloak Pavilion in it. Uchiha Obito seemed to be quite satisfied with the effect of the barrier ninjutsu he used, with a cold and cruel smile on the corner of his mouth. Uchiha Obito was like a god looking down at the living beings under his feet. Finally, although the process is full of twists and turns, the Eye of the Moon project that I have been looking forward to finally has the possibility of success. The current ninja world is too disappointing. Every day, every hour, every minute, every second, there are countless people who lose their lives and bleed their blood dry. Although the world created by Tsukuyomi isn't a real world, everyone who participates in it has their own soul. Now, let me give you a chance to live in the world I created for you. In this place, there will be no more sacrifices, no more oppression, everyone can enjoy the complete peace that the ninja world has never had before. Jubi God Tree, as the Jubi Column Force, I call for your arrival. Chapter 674. He slightly opened the seal on the Jubi, and the chakra of the Jubi leaked out from Uchiha Obito's body. The moment the chakra of the Jubi left Uchiha Obito's body, it directly began to materialize into thick vines, spreading directly from the place where Uchiha Obito was. At first, the scale of the vines was not so large, but when the vines touched the ground, they began to grow wildly like weeds in the spring breeze. The area covered by the 6 red flame formation was directly covered by the dense vines almost in an instant. Not only were there a large number of vines, but these vines also had a very strong lethality. Every ninja or disciple of the Blood Robe Pavilion who came into contact with the vines had all the chakra in their body sucked out in the first place. As for the disciples of the Blood Robe Pavilion, their vitality was directly sucked out. At this moment, whether it was the ninjas or the internal force cultivators of the Blood Robe Pavilion, they all became exactly the same. Everyone directly turned into a dried corpse. If the members of the Blood Robe Pavilion and the Ninja Coalition forces were massacred in the battle against Uchiha Madara, then the members of the Ninja Coalition forces and the Blood Robe Pavilion were simply being harvested, like wheat waiting to be harvested in the autumn field. Their lives were taken away one by one. Damn it! Nangongja quickly waved the Heaven's Disaster Sword that he condensed with natural energy on the blade, wanting to cut off the vines that were attacking him as soon as possible. After seeing a large number of casualties of the Blood Robe Pavilion disciples, Nangongja's heart became even more anxious. His attitude was different from when he first became the head of the Blood Robe Pavilion. Over the years, Nangongzhi became more and more involved in the affairs of the Blood Robe Pavilion. In fact, Nangongzhi's heart was full of feelings for the Blood Robe Pavilion. Now that he saw a large number of casualties of the Blood Robe Pavilion disciples, Nangongzhi's heart was like a burning flame, and he couldn't calm down for a long time. Nangongzhi's mood was exactly the same as the rest of the Kages. They were also full of anxiety when they saw their ninjas being harvested like this. But after some attempts, everyone found that it seemed that only attacks containing natural energy could cause damage to these vines formed by the chakra of the Jubi. Natural energy itself was not a popular type of energy. Looking at the ninja coalition forces, only Nangongzhi and Jiraiya, only two people who could use Senjutsu chakra technique. To be honest, there was very little that the two of them could do to such a large area of vines. Now, the ninjas of the ninja allied forces and the disciples of the Blood Cloth Pavilion are just waiting for death. Just as everyone was in despair, there was a sudden change in the battlefield. The huge purple Susanoo and the Nine Tails formed in the Kurama mode appeared directly on the battlefield, but unlike the previous Susanoo and Nine Tails, the current Susanoo's body was covered with black curse-like patterns for some reason, and the Nine Tails' body was also exuding an extremely huge aura of natural energy. It wasn't difficult to find that Susanoo's body was not only wrapped around Sasuke at the moment, but also Sasuke's teammate Yugo Libra. At this moment, Yugo's body had changed a bit. These black patterns that spread on the surface of Susanoo's body rushed out from Yugo's body. Naruto's eyes at this moment also turned into the cross-shaped pupils of a fox's vertical pupils and a toad's horizontal pupils. Obviously, he used Sage mode and Kurama mode at the same time. Sasuke was able to think of adding his teammate Yugo Libra into Susanoo's body because Orochimaru saw the powerful effect of natural energy on the Jubi chakra and specifically informed Yugo Libra to help Uchiha Sasuke. Naruto, on the other hand, began to try to condense Sage mode because of everything he experienced in the illusory and realistic dream when he learned to control Nine Tails. He didn't expect that he could really use Sage mode. Sage Fox mode and Senjutsu Susanoo joined the battle at this moment. Under the full power of Naruto and Sasuke, they actually managed to stop the vines condensed by the Jubi chakra from spreading to a certain extent. The vines were cut off by Susanoo's long sword and Nine Tails' sharp claws. Although the ninja allied forces and blood-robed pavilion still suffered a lot of casualties, they still managed to save some of the ninjas and blood-robed pavilion disciples. Seeing that Naruto and Sasuke actually stopped the vines formed by the Jubi chakra from spreading, Uchiha Obito's eyes flashed with a trace of excitement. In fact, the defense line protecting the remaining ninjas and blood-robed pavilion disciples was very weak. As long as they defeated either Uchiha Sasuke or Uzumaki Naruto, such a fragile defense line would collapse directly. At this moment, all of the Jubi's actions were actually based on Uchiha Obito's will. Just now, in order to spread the vines quickly, Uchiha Obito didn't exert too much control over these vines. But at this moment, in order to break the defense line formed by Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto, a large number of Jubi vines were directly controlled by Uchiha Obito and rushed in the direction of Naruto and Sasuke. At the moment when Uchiha Obito took over the control, Naruto and Sasuke had already felt a huge pressure. After all, although the vines just spread very quickly, they were almost instinctively spreading. The pattern was still very easy to summarize, and it was precisely because of this that Naruto and Sasuke were able to directly form an effective defense line. At this moment, the vines were under the control of Uchiha Obito, and the way of attack also became tricky. After all, Susanoo and Fusho were still too big, and their movements were actually quite slow. When some vines directly approached Nine Tails and Susanoo at a tricky angle, they immediately began to absorb chakra from Nine Tails and Susanoo. After all, Naruto and Sasuke's chakra was not infinite. After losing part of their chakra, their control of Nine Tails and Susanoo was also a little slow. In this way, a vicious cycle was formed: losing chakra, weakening control, easy to attack, and losing chakra again. Although Naruto and Sasuke were still barely maintaining the defense line, everyone knew that it was only a matter of time before such a line of defense was broken. Chapter 675. Naruto and Sasuke, as the maintainers of the defensive line, were naturally the first to notice the precarious existence of the defensive line. In fact, the reason why Naruto and Sasuke's defensive line was so fragile was naturally because Uchiha Obito took over the control of Jubi, allowing these vines formed by Jubi chakra to attack from an extremely tricky angle. On the other hand, the 9 tails formed by Susanoo and chakra were two separate individuals. The larger the body, the easier it is to reveal various flaws. The imperfect cooperation between Susanoo and 9 tails also gave Uchiha Obito a chance to break through. We can't go on like this, otherwise, it's only a matter of time before we lose. Sasuke's eyes stared at the large number of vines attacking him, and said to Yugo Libra beside him, "Yugo, you immediately go inside Susanoo's body, and let all the ninjas and Blood Cloth Pavilion disciples compress their positions behind us as much as possible. My defensive line here is shrinking." Hearing Sasuke's order, Yugo Libra also nodded solemnly, and then directly jumped out from behind Susanoo where Uchiha Sasuke deliberately weakened Yugo's armor. After Yugo Libra jumped out, Uchiha Sasuke also diverted his attention to check the shrinking situation of the Ninja Coalition forces and Blood Cloth Pavilion behind him. To be honest, the efficiency of the shrinking was not high. After all, these people were originally forced to such a place by the endless vines. The place where everyone can stand has actually been compressed to a limit. Even if they continue to compress the space, they can only shrink a small part of the space, which was completely different from Uchiha Sasuke's expected shrinking situation. But now is not the time for Sasuke to act at will. Now Sasuke knows very well that he can't protect everyone. He must make a choice, otherwise, everyone, including himself and Naruto, will become a dry corpse and be absorbed by these vines. "Naruto, we need to defend together." When Sasuke let Yugo leave Susanoo, Susanoo lost the blessing of Curse Seal Senjutsu. In fact, Naruto already knew that Sasuke was preparing to shrink the front line. However, the consequences of shrinking the front line were also within Naruto's consideration. This would lead to the deaths of many survivors. "Sasuke, do we really have to do this?" A trace of grief flashed in Naruto's eyes. Although Naruto didn't know the people behind him, it was unacceptable for him to send them to their deaths with his own hands. Everyone's life should be cherished and not abandoned by others. After integrating everything he had experienced in his dream, Naruto's will to protect the lives of others had become stronger. "Naruto, look at the current situation. We have no other choice. What we can do now is to try our best to ensure the survival of as many people as possible, not to drag everyone into the abyss of death." Sasuke's tone was very firm, but also very cold. After all, no one knows how many people will lose their lives like this, right? Almost without waiting for Naruto's reaction, Sasuke directly controlled Susanoo and rushed towards 9 tails condensed by chakra. Obviously, Susanoo rushed towards Kyubi in such a way, but when Susanoo collided with Kyubi, there was no impact. Susanoo directly merged with Kyubi's body like water and milk. Sasuke's figure also appeared in the mouth of 9 tails where Naruto was. "Naruto, it's time to make a choice. Do you want to follow your heart's almost impossible to realize wish of saving everyone, or do you want to do your best with me to protect as many people as you can?" Sasuke's eyes stared at Naruto tightly. In fact, Sasuke now threw the most basic and most difficult question of choice to Naruto. From Naruto's point of view, he naturally hoped that he could save everyone, but the reality was that no matter how hard he tried, Naruto couldn't save everyone. "Sure enough, you're still too kind." Seeing the confusion in Naruto's eyes, Sasuke became more determined. Sasuke hoped that Naruto could grow up, no longer an illusory person who was addicted to his own empty hope, but a person who could recognize reality. In Sasuke's view, Naruto was the most likely person to create a new era, but the current Naruto was really not mature enough. In that case, let me help you choose. Sasuke's eyes flashed with a hint of ruthlessness, and he directly reached out and grabbed Naruto's hand in his own hand. At the moment when he grabbed Naruto's hand, the fusion between Nine Tails and Susanoo also became faster. Almost instantly, Nine Tails and Susanoo directly merged into one. The golden Nine Tails body was covered with a layer of purple Crow Tengu armor, and Nine Tails also stood up from his original beast posture, looking somewhat like an armored samurai. The power of Susanoo combined with the power of Nine Tails, so that Nine Tails held a shining chua in his right hand. The light of the chua was very conspicuous. At this moment, in the gloomy night, it felt like the sun, shining on everyone. No one knew whether Naruto and Sasuke were jointly controlling such Megatsu Susanoo, or just Sasuke alone. Megatsu Susanoo held the chua in his hand and began to wield it very flexibly. At this moment, the chua displayed in the hands of Megatsu Susanoo was obviously born from the essence of swordsmanship summarized by Uchiha Sasuke himself. Cutting off the vines, Megatsu Susanoo at this moment looked quite invincible. But in fact, everyone could see that although Megatsu Susanoo at this moment recreated a solid defense line that seemed to be completely unbreakable, it was obvious that the safety space that Naruto and Sasuke could guarantee was indeed getting smaller and smaller. No matter how strong the defense line was, it could only protect people who were getting smaller and smaller. What was the meaning of such a defense line? And all of this was only the first step of infinite Tsukuyomi. Just resisting it was already so difficult, so what way was there to stop all of this? You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.